like we needed to make sure the mayor was here for that conversation. So he's a contributing factor to that discussion. So I'd like to continue that one till next week, if we can put that on next week's agenda, Scott.
Yeah,
We
that'd be
have
fun.
So if the council is moving agenda item 10E to next Tuesday, July 28th. All right. Anything else, Scott, or staff that we need to be aware of?
You do have item 9B and C do need to be continued to July 28th, they're both public hearings. That is voted on the agenda here, but
So continue to July 28th. Okay, so we have
9B and 9C.
9B and C and item 10E to continue to July 28th meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
We'll look for a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve tonight's agenda with the continuation of 9B and C and 10E to July 28th.
I'll second it. Motion by Cindy, second by Diana, all in favor? Okay, we are now to the open session portion of our meeting, and this is where members of the public are welcome to come up here to the podium. Please state your name and address, and you can take 3 minutes to ask questions, have any concerns that you want to bring before the city council. So we'll go ahead and give you the opportunity now.
Hello, my name is Jill Skoy. My address is 1924 North, 1150 West in Pleasant Grove. I'm here representing concerned citizens about the what was done at the Planning Commission meeting last Thursday night. I sent
Just one second, I just want to make a correction that it was the Board of Adjustment.
the Board of Adjustment.
Yeah, just wanna make
Okay,
sure that's correct.
okay, thank
Okay.
you. So I have some questions for you. I sent each of you an email. I'm hoping you had a chance to get that and to review that before I come tonight. So you know why I'm here. We have a main concern about Verizon Wireless coming in to put a cell tower on Manila Elementary School property. I listed in your email the reasons that we have concerns about that, which are health related, which by the 1996 Federal Trade, the Federal Telecommunications Act of 1996, we are not able to fight something like a cell tower based on the health and wellness of the citizens of this city. What I'm coming to you about is that although that is true, we feel like as a small community that we should be able to make ordinances that protect our citizens from the federal government telling us who we can and cannot protect. And I wanted to go through a couple of things that happened that evening that we feel like were not followed correctly when it comes to the City Planning Commission bylaws and operating policies.
Sorry, the Board of Adjustment.
The Board of
Yeah,
Adjustment, is
sorry.
that how I say it? Is it?
Yeah, that's correct. So the Planning Commission is a different body, and then, oh, sorry, we'll go. Tina's our city.
Well, I
Yeah.
was just gonna say, if you're going to read the planning commission bylaws and rules, they're not applicable to what happened last week because
Okay.
it was a separate body that made that decision.
Okay, well, I won't read those then, but I can read.
Well, Jill, if you want to address that, I mean, you're welcome to go ahead. You come prepared. We're willing to go ahead and go
Okay.
ahead and read that. Let's just do that. But just know that they are two different bodies.
Okay,
So I just want to make sure when it goes on record that everyone's clear about what you're referring to. But
will it matter what I've brought if it's a different committee?
Yeah, because they don't have the same policies and rules
Okay.
and bylaws.
So that's my mistake in not reading the correct
that's okay.
and who was exactly making the decisions. But what I can address is that body who made the decision that evening, we believe that they did not follow City Ordinance Code 10-15-36, which says that towers are to be located in rear yard areas and in areas least obtrusive on the public view and neighboring uses. Obtrusive means noticeable or prominent in an unwelcome or intrusive way. It also means obvious, unmistakable, and unmissable. On June 16th, the committee read this, and in our opinion, they chose to dismiss it.
Sorry, did you mean July 16th?
July 16th, yes. Thank you for
Sorry.
correcting me.
No,
I'm really nervous. This is not my forte.
No, you're just, and I just want to, I apologize, I just want to make sure it's on record correctly so that people aren't. confused.
Yes.
So no, just please go ahead and.
Yes, no, you
So I
can,
apologize.
feel free to
Okay.
interrupt me because
Okay.
I appreciate the corrections. Dustin Phillips, who is on that committee, or however you say it, on the board, he asked if they could get an image of how a 75-foot cell tower next to a 30-foot school building and 100 feet from the road would look. They did not have an image that would support showing that it was not obtrusive and that it is on the side yard of the property.
And Joe, can I ask, when you say they, are you referring to Verizon?
Yes, so
Dustin asked Verizon for.
Verizon, yes, he asked Verizon and the city planning committee who were sitting over there if they had an image of that, and nobody produced one, and they said they didn't have one. And some other members of the board told him to take the information that they did have, the images, and imagine what it would look like. So he was not a voting member of the board, but he was obviously concerned about them not following the city ordinance. And Verizon was never asked to present evidence to show that the city ordinance was being met. Let me just see if I have other information that pertains to this. So in the end, our concern is that you will be discussing tonight that you would allow cell towers to be 150 feet apart as opposed to 1,000 feet apart. The current city code says they have to be 1,000 feet apart. If that board had just waited for your decision and you had decided to change that ordinance, we feel this would be a non-issue because Verizon originally wanted to put the cell tower in the park. And I've collected just in one day 110 signatures from members who live within the Manila school boundaries who are opposed to the cell tower being built on the property. And if you need more than that, if I have more time, I'd be happy to get that. So what we're here to ask you as concerned citizens is that you work with the board and with Verizon to find a new location for that so that we can meet everybody's needs. Verizon would actually be able to put the tower up more quickly because they said that they would not be building during school hours, which they would be able to do if they were building at the park. Verizon would also be paying the city, so the city would end up with the money. So that was a benefit to the city. And then the concerned citizens who are concerned about the health benefits of it being on the school property and having their children subjected to 6+ hours for 9 months a year to a cell tower, that would be resolved as well. So that's why I'm here to address you tonight, to hope that you can work with them to find a way to resolve this issue. Thank you.
Sorry, never mind.
You want to ask questions?
Do you have
Kurt?
any questions?
No, I was gonna, I'll wait.
Joel, and thank you for the research and how you put into that, we appreciate that, thank you.
Eric Scoy, Jill's husband, 1924 North, 1150 West in Pleasant Grove. Just one additional quick item is that when we sat in the Board of Adjustments meeting, there was a duty that needed to be met relative to Verizon's ability or good faith effort to co-locate their desired tower with the Sprint tower. And
Where is the Sprint tower?
it is in the park. Yeah. Yeah, Discovery
Don't
Park.
we have one also at the cemetery?
Outside the cemetery.
So there's a need, must be based on the Board of Adjustments bylaws, because it was given as evidence why the decision, the appeal the initial decision by the Board of Adjustments, and then this, of course, led to the appeal, why they couldn't why their decision of no couldn't stand. So the information that Verizon had was their evidence of a good faith effort that they had attempted to co-locate. That information is available. However, the information was not in the hands of the Board of Adjustments until that evening, and they voted yes without really proving that there was a good faith effort or even reading it. So in my mind, that's an issue that the city council should take a look at to make sure that they're exercising due diligence in their decision-making process, which in this case appears they did not. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Dawn Squires. I live at 1202 West, 1320 North in Pleasant Grove. I have talked to several of you about the issue of rated R movies that are in the library. That is a new issue in the last 15 months, I believe. And I've gone to the Pleasant Grove Library Board meeting and talked to them about it. And I'm just here tonight to simply ask you to put it on an agenda for a future date so we can have some more research and time. And I also want to just applaud you, each of you, for your efforts and your time on the council, because just this one issue has taken so much of my time and my thoughts and my energy. So I really appreciate the time you serve and the time you work for our city. And that's why I'm here tonight, just to put it on a future.
Thanks, Don.
Is that already planned or is?
Well, so I guess it depends on what we want on the agenda. Are we discussing whether or not to have them at all in the library, or? Because I'm not super familiar with exactly what's the communication between council and others.
So then what are you interested in having on the agenda specifically related to rated R movies?
I am interested in, first and foremost, removing the rated R movies, and if that can't happen, to have a restriction, because right now in our city, anyone over the age of 6 with a library card has full access to. Did I say something wrong? Rated R movies, and I think that is not safe for our children.
No, sorry, we'll let Sherry just a second, she's our library director.
So we are in the process right now of changing our checkout system so that it will block children under the age of 18 from checking out R-rated movies.
So is that being done in-house? Is that something that can be rectified through you and the library board, or do we need to also take action?
It just depends on what you want to do, because she is asking first to have them removed. That is not something we are looking at unless we are told to look at that more seriously. But we have made it so that you cannot check them out if you're under 18, unless a parent wants to get that permission.
But you have already done that? You've already made that?
We are doing it right now.
Oh, I thought you said you had done that. You haven't done that yet.
Well,
You're doing it.
it's being done like as we speak.
So what is the time frame on that being completed?
Tomorrow?
Okay.
So Sherry, was that just something that goes on their library card? So or can the movies actually be included on the counter as well? So then they can go through self-checkout?
Well, because adults are the ones who will be checking them out, we will not put them behind the counter.
But not necessarily, because if a child under 17 came in and went through self-checkout, then they could.
No, that's what I'm saying. The system that we are working on right now, it's a little bit of a process with the checkout system, but it will block them at the self-checkouts also.
You're talking about like the security license.
So
No, the actual checkout, it will block them from being able to check out on the self-checkouts and with the clerks.
So what happens on the self-checkout? A big siren goes off? No,
Well, I mean,
don't-
people get blocked when their cards are expired, or if they're, we have the wrong address. But there are a lot of reasons that things get blocked, that cards get blocked.
Okay.
It would just come up saying, you can't, that your card is blocked for that checkout.
So is it also possible to put them behind the counter, or so they just wouldn't be able to get access to the movies at all, or?
Well, of course, anything's possible, but that is something that is really, really frowned on in the library world, especially when they are for adults.
So question, when I think there's a security device associated with videos, right? That has to be taken off. Is that taken off by the self-check machine or the librarian?
Oh,
So how do you feel about that?
Well, we've never had rated R movies in our library before, and I looked at the policy and it wasn't in the policy, I think, because there wasn't a need for it. As a city, I don't think we saw the need to have that in the policy. In Provo, the city just to the south of us, the biggest city in Utah County, has 116,000 residents and their library is rated R free. And that is because there's a Utah statute that says that if it offends the community standards, then you don't have to have it in your community. And I feel like it does offend our community standards, and that's why I'd like to have it on a future agenda item that we can look at that more.
I'm comfortable with that. I think it's a great suggestion. We've got two issues, and one of them is resolved as of tomorrow, probably, and the other one we could discuss as a council and see if we want to take any kind of action related to it. I'm comfortable.
yeah, I think it needs to be an open discussion.
If we're okay, next week's agenda is already pretty full. If we do this on August 4th, that'd be all right. Council.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Scott, before we go on to open session, can we address the cell tower?
Yeah, let's have Tina
our city attorney.
walk through the legal side.
Okay, so I want to feel like we've forgotten, so.
Just so the residents that are here tonight on that issue know, one of the things that you requested is that the city try to work with Verizon to get them to move the cell tower to the ball fields. And I just want you to know that we have been working with them for months and months and months. And had the decision been denied, the appeal been denied, then they would have co-located in the Manila ball fields. And so it's not something that we haven't already been involved in. I just want you to know that we have been working with them. The problem that they had and that we had is that our ordinance requires co-location, but the person who gets the pole first sometimes has discretion over how quickly they give permission to the next one in line, and also where on the pole, given other co-locators, they can be located. So Sprint has told Verizon that they could co-locate on the pole that we'd like them to move to, but they've given them such a low spot on the pole that it's not feasible for Verizon to locate there. We have encouraged them to take advantage of the change in the ordinance and to consider relocating their request and coming back to the ball fields on another pole. My understanding, their conversation with our community development department is they're not interested in doing that at this point. But we can certainly, approach them again and ask again. And then in terms of the legal standpoint of what happened procedurally, at this point, because the Board of Adjustment acted in what they call a quasi-judicial manner in hearing that appeal, their decision is final. So the City Council does not have a role in going back and second guessing that decision at this point or overturning that decision at this point. If either party is unhappy with the decision from the Board of Adjustment, the only appeal is directly to district court. And so that limits the ability of our City Council to address the concerns about the decision in the way if you feel like it wasn't made correctly. Does that help? Does that answer some of your questions?
So is the board knew that the city council was considering this option, which would allow Verizon to build in the park on their own tower, which could have been as high as they wanted or as high as city code allows. So my question is what is the process? How is the Board of Adjustment allowed to move forward on an issue that is currently being, like an ordinance that's currently trying to be changed? Could they have chosen to push the meeting to another day? Is there?
Well, their role was to act like a judge on the decision that was made down below, which is at the Planning Commission level. And so while they may have been aware that there was an ordinance amendment in process, their job was to look at and decide whether or not the planning commission's decision was legally correct and could be upheld. So the other considerations that you and I would look at as practical considerations that would make sense for us to do didn't really fit with what they were tasked to do that night. All they were supposed to be was the judge on the decision of granting the conditional use permit that the planning commission made. So the other extraneous interests that we have of, making it easier for the next group to co-locate, that wasn't their job to do.
Can
They
they,
couldn't do it. It had they taken that into consideration, then Verizon would have had an appeal right to go to the district court and say the Board of Adjustment, didn't do what they were supposed to do. They were taking all these other things into consideration that legally they weren't allowed to do.
but could they have decided to postpone the decision, or were they legally bound to make it that night, July 16th?
They could have proved, they always have the right to continue it if they had a reason to continue it.
Okay.
But if they had used pending legislation as a reason to continue it, I don't think that would have been a valid reason legally.
So if we feel that they have not upheld a city ordinance, then we have to appeal to the district court
Yes.
about that.
Yes, because they were the appellate body in this instance. It had already been appealed. And they were the appellate body, so we're just moving up the appellate chain. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
What about, would the school board be an option that they could appeal to? Since they own the property.
Well, I think if you wanted to address the school board and ask them to reconsider granting permission, allowing it to be on their school property, that's certainly something that could be done. You could even approach Verizon and just ask them, say, look, you have an option now. You can go back to the discovery part. Would you consider doing that? Those are two options that you still have open to you, short of filing an appeal in district court.
Would you, is there a basis on a lack of a demonstration of a good faith effort to appeal to the fourth District Court of Appeals?
That
Because
would
they-
require a legal conclusion, and I'm
Okay.
not prepared to do that.
So I guess my plea to the city council is that in future instances, when you know that you're dealing with something that's going to affect a community and also a business that are trying to work together, that there's some type of communication to say, hey, let's wait on this, let's make a decision before we decide this. I'm also concerned with the amount of publicity that went out. I know that there's certain laws, they only have to tell people within 300 feet of it, but I also feel like something that's this large should require more publicity so that people like myself have a chance to get in front of this instead of hearing about the meeting 11 o'clock at night on Wednesday night before the Board of Adjustment is ready to make their decision. So,
Sorry. So as far as the legal notice, Tina, where does that go out? What does the city require to do for something like the Board of Adjustment meeting?
Well, it's my understanding, actually, did your children go to that school?
yes.
It's my understanding that the principal of that school sent an email out to parents encouraging them to support the placement of the tower on the school. So
Yes,
There
that
was
did
some-
happen.
there was some other extra noticing that went out besides what the city does.
Well, we went to the meeting in May that they had, and Verizon had asked for an extension and was not there, and they did not discuss it at that meeting. And I should be more savvy on how this works, but my understanding that it was an open meeting and not a decision-making meeting, which is my fault as a citizen not understanding that. But we did attempt, we weren't at the March meeting, which was where they discussed it I guess the Planning Commission discussed it. I was not aware of that meeting. That information was not dispersed by the principal. Only the May decision or the May meeting, which we did attend, which Verizon did not attend. And then we looked for another meeting in June, which they did not have. and went to the July meeting when we were made aware of it, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to, we have a lot of noticing requirements that we have to fulfill.
I understand.
So it's difficult to place upon the city the requirement to mail out notice somehow to however many people go to that school when, you know, it's the applicant who is responsible for making the request and the private property owner, quite frankly, Alpine School District, who was giving permission for that to move forward, that were the two parties involved. And conditional use permits, we do have to give notice of the public hearing. It's on our website. You know, I don't know where else to tell you to look. There's also a state statute that says if you have a land use issue that you're watching, you can come into community development and give us your name and address and request specific personal notice on any item that has to do with that address or that piece of property. So that would
Okay.
have been an option as well, which
Okay.
I realize you had no idea about, but
Well, I just thought we had more common sense than to put cell towers on school properties, but I've learned that's not true. So thank you for your time.
I do have a couple questions. So I'm wondering if I missed an email about did I miss an email about that she's not saying that we were aware of some policy that we were changing 1,000 feet and 100 feet?
Oh, it's the ordinance, it's actually on the agenda
But
tonight.
did
Prior to the
Oh.
Board of Adjustment meeting, it was never on our agenda or in our packets regarding that issue.
So
So
I just wanted her to
Yeah, we
know
just want to
that
make sure,
we-
so this is
we
never
hadn't
come before our
had
city
any-
council until this was on our, until we heard
Your
notice.
email was the
Yeah.
first that most of us got it. Notice
Is that something that you should have seen when they're making
Not necessarily,
decisions like
it
that?
went to the planning commission and board of adjustment, not those different bodies, not the city council.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't come before, I would got an agenda item, it wouldn't receive notice, not that. I mean, I saw the notice just that it was on the board of adjustment agenda item. I had received a couple of emails from residents, and so I looked on the board of adjustment agenda. But beyond that, we didn't receive, it wasn't on an agenda item, we never discussed as the council, we didn't know there was communication going on between the city staff and Verizon. So we weren't aware until after, just because it wouldn't have come before us, it wasn't something that the city council, but I understand what you're saying as far as if we can communicate better between our other bodies that make decisions, the planning commission, board of adjustment, that we need to be doing that. So I appreciate and understand what you're saying in that regard, that if that communication can increase, then we can try and avoid situations like this, so.
And another question. So is there any other city property that's near there that would be an option for Verizon?
Well, they can come back to the ball field. That is where we would prefer it to be.
But they want their own tower.
And that's what you're,
looking at tonight, if you approve tonight, then they can come back to the ball field and put it
on a different light pole in the ball field.
Okay.
And that's what the city has always wanted to happen.
And in your discussions with Verizon, have you been led to believe, or can you state that that is one of their considered options? Or you don't know?
I don't know. After the board, I have not had communication with anybody after the board of adjustment decision, so I don't.
So we have been working with Verizon for well over a year in their attempt to locate a tower, a cell tower for their services. All along, we have encouraged them to co-locate with the Sprint tower that's in existence at the Manila Park. They have struggled in getting anything working with Sprint from the get-go. They had a lack of communication coming from Sprint for a long time. At least that was their claim. But we did encourage them through many different communications to do that. They ultimately decided to go forward and ask for the Manila Elementary site, which was denied by Planning Commission, then overturned recently by the Board of Adjustment. But we have communicated with them that we have this other thing that the city's been working on, which was actually instigated based on what's been happening in the last few months, instigated by staff to find another way to deal with these cell towers. And so they were aware that this was going forward, but with all their efforts and plans and time and money they have expended They just wanted to get the appeal so they would have something to do. Now, whether or not they might change their mind and then redraft everything to go back over at the Manila Elementary, at the Manila Park. I can't say if that's a realistic option for them. It's something that they're aware they could do if it gets approved, the ordinance gets approved here tonight. But so far, they have not indicated that they're interested in that.
And they're aware of our agenda item tonight.
I think Tina alluded to this idea that if their recommendation is, I would start with Alpine School District, because now they can tell them no. They can say, we don't want you putting it on Manila Elementary. And then the school district can shut that down. The city at this point can't shut them down. They have their legal process now that they have received a ruling on that they can proceed. So, or the Manila Elementary principal or whatever, I think that's who you probably should engage at this point if you want to see a change.
So at this point, the 4th District Court could put a stay on it if the Board of Adjustments, I would imagine, did not follow their own bylaws or the zoning of Pleasant Grove City. Maybe our only option. I'd imagine the Alpine School District has signed a lease. I believe they have at Manila Elementary. So the district's probably not an option if there is a lease in place. So the 4th District Court, I think, may be the next step.
Yeah, and I think like Tina says,
We can't comment on
I
that.
don't know how they'll react.
That would be a private civil action you guys would have to pursue.
Thank you.
Anyone else for the open session?
I actually came for something else, but my name is Jennifer Bischoff and my address is 1395 North, 390 East. And I do have a question now after this is brought up. First, I want to make a statement that I think that CUPs are given out too freely. I think that we need to tighten up ordinances in our city and then quit making exceptions, because we're running into lots of problems. And I'm hearing of another one tonight. And if you are looking at changing the distance from 1,000 feet, could Manila end up with another cell tower on their property? You know, I mean, that's something I think you guys need to consider possibly before you necessarily make that decision, because I mean, my son's not there anymore, but we've had this, I love Manila. We've been there for 18 years. All my children have gone there, and you don't want to see in the name of money, which is really the motivator in all this, children having, you know, adverse effects to cell phone towers that could be all over your school property. So the real reason I came here tonight is last week my neighbor had a motorcycle and a little kid razor stolen off the side of her house. And in the process of looking through the surveillance video, she noticed a car stop in front of my house and someone get out and walk into the yard. Then they drove and stopped in front of her house. They didn't get out. And then they drove to another neighbor's house, stopped and got out. And so this caught her attention because she was looking for someone that might have stolen her kids' toys. And so she showed it to me, and I could immediately see that it was a city employee car or a city car because it had the PG sticker in the window. But it was 3:30 in the morning. And so I said to her, you know, and I'm not saying anyone from the city stole the stuff, but it caused me to think, what are they doing in my yard at 3:30 in the morning? It happened on July 15th at 3:30 in the morning. I have an odd number house, so if I was watering, if they were checking for water violations or something, it was legal for me to be watering then. It's a concern to me. And also, it feels like a violation of your personal property to see someone walking in there at 3:30 in the morning. I think of my sweet little neighbor across the street who's a widow that would be scared to death if she saw a stranger in her yard at 3:30 in the morning. I don't know if they were, you know, checking meters or whatnot, but it's not stuff that can be done. Either if they're looking for violations, just drive through a cul-de-sac or drive through. Why do they have to be getting out and looking in yards? Or if they're reading meters, that should be done during the day. I've seen meter readers on their golf carts coming through, you know, so, and that's during the day. So honestly, I don't know what was going on. I still don't know because my other neighbor has an even number house and they went into her yard. But it's a concern, and I just wanted to bring it up because I feel a little violated. So
You mentioned that there was surveillance video. Is that private residence?
Yes, a
owned
private
by-
resident. And so we saw the actual people that came. Well, you can't really get a good picture because they must have known. They came in a different way. So you only see a clip of them coming. But this happened to, catch her attention as she went through. And and it made me think, how often does this happen that I don't know about? I feel like we should have a certain level of, peace that we don't have people going through our yards at that time of night.
Pretty bad situation if somebody didn't know it's in your yard. in the city.
Well, it could be dangerous for a city employee too, quite frankly. Lots of people have guns and would feel no problem protecting their property with a gun, at the middle of the night.
Let's ask, our public works director, Marty, do you know, what's the procedure when they are doing water enforcement? Are they supposed to get out of the truck? What do they do?
Well, understand that that's the time that people are watering, and so that's the time that we have these people going out and checking and trying to look if there are any issues with people watering on. And I don't know why, maybe they were mistaken on an address on the wrong side of the street, and then they went to the other side type of a thing as to why they would check the even numbers and not just the odd numbers on that day. So I don't know why they would have done that, but sometimes they might get a notice from somebody saying, hey, this person's watering his backyard at night or something. In those instances, I would say that maybe that's what they're doing. However, I don't know if that's good policy, and we probably need to talk about that a little bit more. I'm fairly new at this and what they do. I know that they're out at night. I know they're checking to see who's watering, and there are tickets that are being issued probably nightly that we are finding people that are not following.
Well, and I have to admit, we did get a notice because I didn't realize, we weren't watering with the sprinklers, but we did water a dry patch with the hose. And that apparently is not legal on my on my off day, which I have heard people say that they are not aware that you can't even turn your your hose on that's hooked up to the secondary water. I wasn't aware of that. And so we got a notice, but we water on our assigned days. So.
And that's fine. And we find a lot of people that turn their hose on and just leave it on all day long. I mean,
Right.
those things obviously are issues. If it's for a few minutes or something like that, but they likely wouldn't see it during the day anyways. But
So Marty, is that something you can address with the water enforcement officers about going to the backyard and maybe, because I think that could be an issue, as you said,
Yeah, I
for not
agree.
only the employee, but also the homeowner.
Yeah, when we initially put the program in place, the direction was not to,
Exit the
if they
vehicle.
saw a violation, they were supposed to write it down and the door hanger was going the next day. We did not want them in the middle of the night approaching people's doors and putting door hangers on. If that's been lost in translation the last 2 years we've been doing this, we need to revisit that. Sprinklers in the backyard and things like that,
There's not a lot.
we don't want city employees on private property at 3:30 in the morning, so we'll get that one resolved. Did your door hanger come in the middle of the night?
No. He came up to my door with and that was a while ago. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, so maybe, yeah, it was a separate day, but even so, even if they were looking to see if I was violating something, it was on a day that it would have been okay for me to be running my sprinklers in the middle of the night if I chose to do that. Does that make sense? So,
Okay, so Marty, you already do it with the water enforcement officers, and then we can review the policy, make sure they're not. I mean, I would say, what about even during the day, walking in someone's backyard? Is that something we want to be doing?
Well,
I would say that they'd probably go to the door first and knock if there's an issue. They've all, at least the instances that I've heard of that happening where they've noticed something, they always try to notify the resident first by going to the door is what I understand. And then after that, they may go peek their head in the backyard and make sure that something's not, if they can hear it or something just to verify that it is what they think it is. But maybe we need to talk about that policy as well as far as private property access and things of that nature.
There's some of us that like to sunbathe there, no?
Yeah.
In our gardening.
So I don't know how to be comfortable with the whole backyard thing.
so we'll revisit.
They're in city shop.
but at 3:30 in the morning, you can't see a city shirt. So,
Yeah, I mean, if my kids were in the backyard and someone came in, I don't know, that would be,
Yeah.
I don't know. So,
Definitely a concern.
yeah, if we can address that.
well, and
That's why
honestly,
we're
if you're watering in the backyard, you're going to see driveway and sidewalks and stuff wet from the front yard because most people have their sprinklers on a timer system. And I can't imagine that it's only doing the backyard if they're violating things.
I
So,
appreciate you bringing this.
anyway,
because
so-
that's gonna protect both the city employee and the homeowner, and Scott will work with Marty on getting that.
okay.
Making sure that policy's enforced, and if there's anything regarding the backyard that the employees aren't aware of, we'll make, day or night, at this point, the council's comfortable just saying,
just not appropriate to enter under private property. We'll leave them a notice on the door. They can contact Public Works at that point. So,
Okay, thank you.
Are you okay with that?
No, that's fine. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Thank
I
you.
had a couple of questions, Jen, before you sit down.
Oh, yes.
Have you shared that surveillance video with the city staff at all?
No, I've got a picture. She took a picture and gave it to me. You can see the date, it's
It would
clearly
be
middle of the
possible
night.
for our law enforcement professionals to identify the very vehicle, or we could do some kind of investigation on this specific incident and see if there's.
I'm pretty comfortable that it was my guess is that it was looking for water violations, but it bothered me when it was happening, so.
So can I just do one little follow-up as far as this is concerned? Can we get that back next week and have a follow-up? And then who will be contacting Jennifer to let her know?
Yeah, because I will do
it's-
some
how
next
this
week.
is solved?
There's not a formal policy on it, it's just our practice
Well,
and internal policy.
Right, but I would like to have some follow-up next week as to how that was handled this week.
No problem. Yeah, I
And
mean,
then some.
I can tell you right now how it's gonna go.
Okay.
We're gonna tell our employees not to get out of the car in the middle of the night and come and do that.
Okay.
We'll address backyards during the day and see if there's a way, whether it's a visual from the side of the street, but not actually walking back there.
Okay.
So we'll
We'll
instruct
just
the
follow up
employees.
with some kind of communication next week and then
Okay.
somebody get with Jennifer.
Thank you.
And I have a
Yeah.
more.
Thank you.
And then, as far as the issue with the hose, if it's on your date and you're watering with the hose, is there a
So,
different policy for
No,
that? Or?
I mean, right now, even if you're with culinary and you're on the wrong day, that is a violation.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if it's culinary or secondary, because we don't know per se what the source of the water is.
Can I just make a comment to that? Because when I asked him about that, he told me if I wanted to water my dry spots on my off day, I needed to hook my hose up to the culinary system, which I thought was crazy because it's more, you know what I mean?
But
But
that's on the off day, right?
that's on the off day. So, but what you're saying is it doesn't matter whether it's culinary or secondary.
No
You can't water on your,
It's just enforcement wise, we don't know.
right, no, that makes sense, but that's different than what I was
So
told.
We need to go back to our
Can you
people
clarify
and
that
make
as
sure
well?
they're giving.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Are our enforcement guys that do the water work, are they the ones we've had for the same 2 years? Have we kept the same water
I don't
enforcement?
know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that either. I know Billy Joe's.
They're the same as us.
That's the same. Yeah, I'd be just
But
curious when we get our follow-up in a week, to understand the process. Do they get a background check? I mean, if things are going missing, I just want to make sure that we're doing a thorough hiring process.
The one problem is that we've told everyone to water, from 10 PM. So we've asked everybody to water at 3 AM. And so now we're, if they see water running down the gutters, I know that they need to be respectful, but they also need to find out who's violating the watering, so.
Well, and I don't want to imply in any way that we assume that our public works employees are stealing people's property, so I want to make sure that's clear that we're not implying that, and I know Jen, you did not imply that at all, but as a council, we are not implying that. I don't think that's appropriate to imply that.
We'll report back.
Anyone else for open session? Hi.
Yeah, sorry. My name is Randy Sloat. I'm at 686
Can you
West,
spell your last name?
SLOAT. I'm at 686 West, 1650 North in Pleasant Grove. I'm here about the Verizon Tower thing. I'm not trying to bounce back and forth between subjects and that type of thing, but there's a great concern about it still. And the way things were followed. And if the district court is my only option, then so be it. But if there is I've been here since the beginning on it. From the communication that went out, the sorry communication that was the size of a playing card maybe that came out in coupon day in the mail, to the first meeting where 3 of us showed up and were able to get the planning commission to deny it, then to see it overturned by the adjustments board or whatnot, and then now to this point. And it's kind of funny how the story has changed through that length of time. At first, it started out with Verizon saying, "Oh, we can't get in touch with these people at all." With Sprint, with carriers, with anything like that. Okay, that's what it started out with. So in the first meeting, it was asked that they communicate and try and co-locate to the best of their abilities. So next meeting, the Board of Adjustments meeting, same kind of story. There's no communication. There's no, nothing had happened. They tried, they've done their due diligence. They tried their hardest to make it happen, and they couldn't. And so then we come here tonight, and the thing is, I'm in the industry, so I know what they're looking for. And unfortunately, money is the biggest motivator here for everybody, because by law we can't use anything else as a reason. So, and so to see to see how this story has changed, to see there's no communication with it, and then to hear the story that I thought all along, being in the industry, of they had that option, they were provided that option, but they didn't want to take it. They wanted to go specifically for the Manila option. Is very frustrating. And then also to still not see any proof of communication on it throughout this entire process, and only to hear through several other people what actually happened. So the other thing that I'm here about is just, like I said, there's certain things by law that we just can't cite for reasons to push this tower off. And as much as I hate it, that's the way it is. But there was one thing that was within law that was brought up at the first meeting, and it wasn't held, which was somehow pushed to the very beginning of this. And I knew and stated this in the first meeting, that can't be stated by law as a reason to deny it. I knew that, and that was somehow pushed to the forefront of the meeting. And that's, of course, what Verizon came in and placed on the slideshow most, was the fact that you can't use health as it. Throughout the meeting, though, sorry, getting to the point, is that in the code, it has to fit in to the community, to the neighborhood. And that was the only thing that people could debate, because everything else is locked down by law. So we debated that. A cell tower doesn't fit in to this community. There's nothing else around even remotely like it other than the park, which is Manila Park. That's the closest thing. That's why we've pushed for the tower to be moved there, because it lines up with it. There's poles, there's chain link fence. They're high, they're 40 feet high or whatnot. And you've got light posts. I mean, you've got everything there. This cell tower fits in that environment. I mean, you come to the sign right out here, and it says promote an attractive and sustainable environment. And a cell phone tower is not attractive. That is the only thing that we can push. And at this Board of Adjustments meeting, that was completely, blatantly thrown aside as something that it's not only the only thing that we can fight, but it's also within city code. And so to have that as our only out, to be completely just neglected, and for some reason there was a fire under people to pass that thing that night. There was no continuation. Verizon continued that meeting, I don't know, 2 months? I mean, the original meeting happened back in March. So May, I think they lined one up and then they continued it. June, they lined one up and they continued it. And I've showed up for each one of those. It's very frustrating when a meeting is continued and you've made time personally to come to the meeting and only to find out that it's been continued. So it doesn't belong. To miss the ordinance that was passed or going to be passed tonight, I guess, if you guys approve it, of the whole 150-foot thing, to miss that by 2 weeks within the Board of Adjustments is really kind of bad. And that was also brought up as a concern in the meeting a couple weeks ago. I do fear for the same thing that this lady brought up about a second cell tower going in on that property. So I do think, while I want it so that it can fit in the ballpark, I am concerned about it at other places. I just think that better judgment needs to be had when making decisions, especially with something like this. And it's not just the city, it is the representatives of the school, the district, the principal, and the community board, I think is what they call it, community council, speaking for the residents of that area. That decision should not have been made. And if we have to go to the school board or school district to talk about it and have it refuted, I guess, and the district court, I guess that's the way it's going to be, but it's messed up. So anyway, that's all.
Anyone else? Chief Smith?
Just real quick, I was gonna wait till staff business, but I don't want to make him wait the whole meeting. So if I could have Detective Pedersen come in, I think he's out there somewhere. I received a letter from the Utah County Major Crimes Task Force, which our Detective Pedersen, who's one of our officers, is assigned to that task force right now. And I just wanted to bring him in and give him a little recognition for a job very well done. And I'll just read this letter to you. The Utah County Major Crimes Task Force concluded a 2-month Title III investigation into a group known as the Fernando Organization. This group had ties directly to Mexico and was involved in the transportation of heroin to Oregon and Utah. The task force started the Title III investigation on April 24th and ended on June 23rd. The task force arrested 15 suspects in this drug trafficking organization, whose job duties include major distributors, dealers, dispatchers, and runners. This investigation was extremely difficult due to the fact that this group had been investigated by the DEA once before. They were extremely cautious, and it made it very difficult for our task force to conduct some surveillance on them. This Title III operation intercepted 10 phone lines and positioned 7 pole cameras in strategic places in order to complete this investigation. The task force spent thousands of hours to bring this complicated investigation to a conclusion. This was truly a team effort by members of the Utah County Major Crimes Task Force. Our case officer was Chad Pedersen. He was responsible for the general operation of this complicated, successful Title III investigation. I feel it is my duty and obligation to express my appreciation for the outstanding job Detective Chad Pedersen did in this investigation. The task force arrested 15 suspects and seized 20 pounds of heroin. This represents a street value of $908,000. This is one of the larger seizures of heroin on a Title III investigation that the task force has been involved in. There is no question that Detective Chad Pedersen has made our community a safer place to live. On behalf of all of our communities in Utah County and the state of Utah, I want to express my appreciation for his time, effort, and dedication. Law enforcement cannot function effectively without the support of their families who stands behind them. Therefore, I want to thank his family for their support during this lengthy investigation. Sincerely, Lieutenant Dennis Harris, Field Commander, Utah County Major Crimes Task Force. So I don't have a big award for you. I'll give you a copy of the letter and tell you how much I appreciate you. We put people on that task force and we want them to shine, and Chad has done that. He's a great example of what Pleasant Grove has to offer on a county and state level, and he has really done a great job. And I'll make sure a copy of this gets in your file. Thank you, Chad.
Thanks so much, Chad. Cover right now. For some reason, let's not take a picture. I don't anything I can on Facebook. Thank you for keeping us safe. Anyone else? Open session. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the open session and move to our consent agenda items. These are items that have been discussed beforehand
are non-controversial, do not require further discussion, and include our city council meeting minutes, a payment request to Gerber Construction, and consider a paid vouchers for July 10th. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda items, or are there any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Dean, do you have a question? I'd love to have an update. Is the micro hydro a blue energy project?
That's Blue Energy.
How's it going?
It's under construction and on the way. I don't, he's the one who oversees that project, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's a great project.
I make a motion to approve the consent items.
And I'll second it.
Motion by Eric, second by Diana. All in favor?
Aye.
Did I say aye? Remember how I
You
was-
still
vote.
vote.
It's confusing when I'm up to council member the mayor. So. Okay, we'll go ahead and move to agenda item 7A, which is to consider the appointment of Nils Spiegel as the Mudhole Neighborhood Chair. Is that, who's presenting? Is that Lindy
Well,
or
Niels
Scott?
is here,
Nils
Hi.
is here?
and we can have him kind of tell us a little bit about himself. And
Oh, sure.
Thanks. My name is Nils Fugel, and I've lived in Pleasant Grove most of my life, moved to other states, and have moved back to the best city in the world. I was asked if I would like to be a neighborhood chair, and I said, yes, sure. It'll be fun. That's my quick, short answer. It'll be fun, it'll be a lot of work, but it'll be nice to continue to be involved in the community. And it's the mud hole area. How many know where the mud hole area is? It's the last area in Pleasant Grove that could dry out after the spring rains and the runoff. So it's out about 1400 west and 8th north. That's where I live, right in that area. So that was the last of the fields to dry out, thus the mud hole area. So thank you. Appreciate this.
You've been willing to serve.
Oh,
So
thank you.
love the community, so thank you.
Thanks.
It's good to be engaged. City development. Yeah, we love
Now
it.
you have an official title.
Well, great. We appreciate it. Thank you. Council, I move the appointment of Niels Fugel as the Mudhole Neighborhood Chair.
Second.
Motion by Ben, second by by Eric.
Aye.
Aye. All in favor, aye. Alright. Here we have a presentation now, agenda item 8A. This will be by Jeff.
Yes,
By
thank you.
Utah County Attorney Jeff Newman to present an award for our police department.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. As you mentioned, my name is Jeff Buman. I'm the county attorney. Before I begin, actually, I'd like to express my appreciation for the support that your department and the council shows for the Major Crimes Task Force. Excuse me. Actually, the level of drug interdiction that they conduct, I think, would surprise most citizens. There is a lot of, particularly heroin, moving through and around Utah and Utah County, and they've done a tremendous job interdicting that in trying to dismantle or disrupt these large drug trafficking organizations, which are primarily based out of Mexico. So kudos to them. I know it takes financial support, and as a county attorney, we're grateful because it really improves the safety of all citizens of Utah County. So thank you.
Thank you.
But what I'm here for is actually to talk about the professionalism and dedication of your police department. I'm not even sure dates anymore. It seems like it was a year and a half ago. I received a call driving back from Salt Lake from one of my prosecutors that they had a death of a baby that had been found in Pleasant Grove. And over the next few hours, I think detectives found baby after baby, as you well know. The person who committed those atrocities was Megan Huntsman. And she's currently in the state prison. The reason I'm here is because over many years, our office has done, even in Utah County, which is a very, very safe community, we do have homicides here. We're 500 and almost 50,000 people. And in fact, last year, our office closed almost 15 homicides, not all dramatic like this one, but some were automobile homicides, some in the scale of things relatively minor. I don't mean to diminish the importance, but we do have crime here. And this stood out because of the heinousness of what occurred. 6 babies that we know of for sure. But it also stood out because of the dedication and professionals of the police department. We've done many homicide cases over the years, and I don't think we've ever seen better police work conducted more professionally and more timely than was done in this case here. I don't think I've ever seen a case of this magnitude kind of sailed through the system because there really wasn't a lot of defense for Ms. Huntsman to put on. The police department had wrapped up, they dotted every I, they crossed every T, they'd even gone deeper than we asked them to do. We had a meeting where we talked about duct tape and fingerprints, and frankly, we were saying, well, we're okay if you don't go that deep. And they said, no, we're going to go that deep. And they did. And it didn't produce additional evidence, but it foreclosed arguments by the defense. So it was, in a sense, it saved taxpayers tremendous amounts of money because of the efforts of the police department. We didn't have to put as many resources into it from our office. And frankly, the public defender was somewhat trapped because they couldn't provide her the level of maybe representation they wanted to, or the cost that they would have had to incur because they did such great work. So I have a plaque. I know it's not tickets to Disneyland, but we'd like to recognize Chief Smith and the detective and officers that participated in that investigation. If I could quickly read it. It says, presented to the Pleasant Grove Police Department, State of Utah versus the Megan Huntsman Investigation Team. In recognition of your outstanding professionalism and thoroughness, your attention to detail, determination to uncover the truth, and adherence to the highest professional standards while conducting this sensitive and highly publicized homicide investigation led to 6 murder convictions and reflect great credit upon the Pleasant Grove Police Department and the City of Pleasant Grove from April 12, 2014 until April 20, 2015. And I would note she doesn't have a parole date for almost 50 years. So thank you. Again, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Chief Smith, any words?
You know what, I can't say enough about the team that we have here in Pleasant Grove. I know the council's heard it before, but an amazing group of people, not just the sworn officers, but all of our staff, our civilian staff, our dispatch center. It's a joy to work with them. And I wish the residents of Pleasant Grove understood better how fortunate they are. I've worked with law enforcement all throughout the state, and you have a good group of law enforcement professionals in this city, and I'm grateful to work with them and be part of them.
Thanks, Chief. And as we said, I don't think we have any idea what you do on a daily basis, and then there's a huge case that comes on like this that affects you emotionally and physically, and we just don't have any idea. So on behalf of the city, just thank you for all you do every day to keep our community safe and to put away the bad guys and to, just make things better here in Pleasant Grove. So thank you so much.
I'd like to thank County Attorney Buman for doing that. Thank you for recognizing these guys. They deserve it. So thank you very much.
Thanks for coming tonight. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and continue with, we're on agenda item 9A, which is the public hearing to adopt ordinance 2015-27, amending the Pleasant Grove City Code, section 10-15-36-D, commercial communications applicable citywide, reducing the required 1,000 foot distance between cell towers. And this will be presented by Director Young.
Okay, council, this is the ordinance you've heard so much talk about in advance of us actually talking about it. So this ordinance did come about following concerns and discussions about cell towers and their placement and what the options were in the community. So staff did review this and has taken it forward to the Planning Commission for their review, and they excuse me, unanimously recommended to you the approval of this proposal. Sorry, I'll grab some if I need. So some of this has already been discussed tonight, but just as a brief review, the Planning Commission denied the request at the Manila Elementary School. The Board of Adjustment approved the appeal, which also approved the conditional use permit. City Council is unable to review or overturn. Any further appeal goes to district court, and the new code will not affect Verizon unless they choose to take advantage of it. The intent of this ordinance is to allow more reasonable tower location opportunities. What basically it does is reduce the required separation of 1,000 feet to 150 feet on public property with supporting infrastructure, and require that co-location on public property occur when it is requested. There was a suggestion, as we were talking about this from the city attorney, that perhaps if there is sufficient concern about 150 feet allowing an additional cell tower to occur on school property, that we could change the verbiage public property to city-owned property. That would take it away from the schools. It doesn't mean it couldn't happen on school properties. It just means the reduced separation would be permissible on city-owned property. So if that's something you're interested in, that's something we could easily change. Okay, so that's basically all we're doing on the ordinance. If you'd like to have me read the specific verbiage that is being applied in the ordinance that's before you, we can do that.
I'll let you go ahead and, oh, sorry.
Sorry, can I just make a couple comments before you move forward? Just an explanation. The specific changes are twofold. Number one, to allow the closer placement of cell towers on public property to encourage the co-location at locations that we want them to be closer. But the other thing is too, and this addresses some of the concerns from the residents in the Manila School area. Part of the problem was that it really was difficult to get the primary locator, which happened to be Sprint, to cooperate in a timely fashion. And there was very little that we could do about that. So the ordinance amendment actually puts some teeth into our already existing requirement to allow co-location, in that it says that if they do not allow it, then their conditional use permit can be revoked. So it gives us a little more power over making sure that the providers play nice in the sandbox and cooperate with each other. So I want to make sure that's pointed out for those of you who are concerned about that. The other thing is, Ken, is you and I just briefly whispered the idea of changing the language to municipal owned property, but Dagan has pointed out that there is a pending project on the high school property where we actually want them to be able to make the next cell tower closer. We don't want it to go on 1,000 feet. So
I'm sorry, there's a new pending tower other than what has just recently been approved up there at the high school?
So that was the idea, was that they ended up by the rec center.
Right.
Where they're proposed, because they had to be 1,000 feet away.
Right.
They wanted to replace one of the light standards at the baseball field, which had them within the 1,000 feet boundary. So if we restricted only municipal property, then the cell tower at the rec center is again, that's their only choice, is to be there.
Okay.
Where otherwise they could have put it on the school.
The school ball fields. Perhaps we could add some type of verbiage that would restrict it to public properties where there are existing light pole facilities or similar facilities. I don't know what verbiage we would use, but that would allow it to occur on school properties where they have ball fields.
I just think if we're gonna do that, we probably need to involve the school district so they have a chance to comment on that.
Yeah.
If we're gonna make a decision on that tonight, then I don't know if that's something we wanna take it back to see. If we're gonna exempt the school district out of this, I think they need a chance to respond.
Did we ask them when we included them? I mean,
Well, just when they approached us a year ago and said, we want to put a cell tower on the high school baseball field, and we told them you can't.
Okay.
And so they said, all right, instead of that, we're gonna move it right next to the rec center.
Okay.
And so we're gonna put it there to meet our 1,000 feet. Still school property, but it was gonna be in an area where it was gonna change things. In fact, I think it was gonna be the area where we have our Sunday night concert. And so we told the school, hey, we gotta figure something else out here.
Okay.
And so they're aware that this 1,000-foot thing could go away, because they would, I think they're working with AT&T. They would like to be able to tell AT&T, the city is not requiring the 1,000 foot anymore. We can put you back on the ball field. which would
Which is a
serve,
better spot.
which would serve everybody better for them to be there. So it's one of those where the Manila situation is a little different. It would serve everybody better if they could be at Discovery Park. In this other situation, it would serve everybody better if they could be at the high school ball field. And so if we change this to say we're going to exempt the school district out of that, in one case it works, and in one case it probably doesn't. So I don't know if we need to involve Alpine School District other than we just need to be aware that they.
If you have supporting infrastructure, if that gets more descriptive, then you could say, you used a couple of words there on
Oh, just
already existing.
existing light poles or similar structures.
Ken, you wanna go ahead and read what you have and we'll open up to the public?
Sure.
hearing?
So this is modifying the verbiage in section 10-15-36-D of the supplementary development standards. And so the actual suggested amendment occurs with letter D.
It's E, little e, E1.
It's actually D4, little e1. Multiple users is little e, and then one is, it's getting towards the end there saying, well, I just better read multiple users. This part is not yet being changed. Multiple users. All towers are to be designed to accommodate 3 separate users. A letter must also be supplied stating that the owners of the tower will allow for co-location and that the structure has been constructed to allow for this unless grid documentation is supplied by an independent consultant that co-location will create a hardship. Only one conditional use permit approval shall be required unless the tower or ground equipment is expanded, at which time the existing CUP or conditional use permit is to be modified. So what's being added is number 1, towers with available co-location points located on public property will be required to allow co-location at Pleasant Grove City's request. Failure to respond to a written request from Pleasant Grove City within 30 days of the request may result in revocation of the conditional use permit. Number 2, failure to allow co-location where available may also result in revocation of the conditional use permit. So those are 2 suggested add-ons to the code. And then going down to little letter H, separation. Commercial communication towers shall have a minimum separation requirement of 1,000 feet. This was a standard that when we reviewed this particular code about 5-6 years ago, we reviewed other communities and their distance requirements, and this was used in other cities. So we utilized that, not based on any other scientific studies necessarily, but the concept was we don't want to have cell phone tower farms or forests in one location. We want to have them spread out more. Then the suggestion is that number 1 underneath that be added. Cell tower separation may be reduced to 150 feet provided it is located on public property and attached to an existing pole or building infrastructure with the ability to accommodate communication equipment. So I'm wondering now, by reading through that again, Tina, maybe you can help, is it's public property and attached to an existing pole or building infrastructure with the ability to accommodate communication equipment. That would basically rule out an elementary school that doesn't already have a tower.
Right.
You're
So perhaps there is no needed change here.
And that would also allow the school to put it on the high school.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the tower's already there with the light.
Right.
I think the language already accommodates that.
Anything else, Ken? Or any other questions for Ken?
That's all that's being proposed for change in the ordinance.
Can they attach to a light pole, not a light pole, a power pole?
Most likely not. I suppose that would have to be looked at with the power company, but we're concerned that there's sufficient structure available for that to occur. It would be up to them to determine if that's something that is feasible.
They don't attach to existing lights either. They replace the light pole with a new pole.
That's right.
And reattach the luminaires on
That's right.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open this up for public hearing. If anyone wants to make comments.
I did not know about the high school, so I'd just like to make a couple comments. I am aware that we can't argue on the basis of health and wellness, but I'd just like to read a couple things so it's on the record. That the World Health Organization in 2011 categorized RF radiation, which is what comes off of cell towers, as a possible carcinogen based on the research by over 30 scientists. And the FCC, who makes the guidelines of what is safe and what is not, after writing the rules in 1996, notes that studies showing relatively low levels of RF radiation, which is what they tell us come off those poles, can cause certain changes in the immune system, neurological effects, behavioral effects, and other health issues, including cancer. Obviously, this is still something that's under a lot of scientific, they're researching it still. So before you make a decision on this, on how it would affect high school or how it would affect elementary schools, I would just say that I believe we can work within the restrictions of the 1996 Federal Communications Act that allow us to protect our citizens, especially those who are most vulnerable, and that includes high school students. I think that we start to think, oh, we need one here and we need one there, but in the end, and I'm a cell phone user, I'm not against them, but I do think we should think of the places where these kids spend the most time when they're in developmental phases and come up with city codes that helps us protect them. And this may be too late for Manila, but it might not be too late to stop an additional one being at the high school or one being placed at another elementary school somewhere else. And I would just ask that before you agree on how to change the code, that you think through all of the wording and how that will affect the most vulnerable of our citizens in this city. Because it bothers me that the federal government is playing an overarching arm and telling us how we can or cannot protect people. But you as a city council can create ordinances that does that, and people would appreciate that.
Okay, anyone else for the public hearing?
This is probably the last you'll hear from the SCOYs, but
That's okay.
it may be worthwhile to consider in the language what height recommendations you can have on the pole. So co-location is actually possible. We heard in the case of the park that co-location was not possible. In fact, Sprint said, my understanding is they said that's okay, but you're going to be at 60, 65 feet. Now, the higher it gets, the more of a public nuisance it is, but the lower it is, the more towers you're going to have spring up, because they'll have an argument to say we can't co-locate, especially for third on the rung. So I would also consider that language on height and co-location. Thanks.
So what is our height? So you can refresh down.
We have 3 listed, right? 3 listed.
Yeah, we already have 3 heights listed. I'm sorry,
4.
I went back that. So they can be 70 feet, 80 feet, 90 feet, and 100 feet. That's already in the ordinance. And then depending on how tall they are, they have a restriction. They have to be a corresponding further distance away from a residential property line. So if it's a 70-foot tower, they have to be 150 feet from the residential property line. And it goes up from there. If you're a 100-foot tower, you have to be 225 feet from the residential property line.
So I have a question. Oh, can we even comment? Sorry.
No, I was just looking.
So I have a question. Can we, as a city, municipality, restrict them out of our city?
No.
And why is that?
Because of the Federal Telecommunications Act.
Okay.
We wouldn't have service.
Well, I know.
The funny thing was, I was just talking to Sprint like 3 days ago, begging them to get a tower. I apologize.
So,
I'm a user.
Right, but so that's, we as a municipality can put on restrictions and control where they go
To some extent,
to some extent, but we, even though it is a federal thing, we cannot restrict them beyond the ability for them to be in our city.
Yes, you can't say no cell towers in Pleasant Grove City.
Okay.
Can't we just not do that on the basis of health? Wasn't that what the?
They have to follow city code, so you can make a code that says that it can't be, I mean, we have a code that says it can't be 150 feet from a residential property, and Verizon has to adhere to that. So there can be codes that protect the children or citizens. You just can't say you can't have any of them.
Right.
You
But
can't do it on the
can't be
basis of
so
health.
restrictive that it seems to be, we're trying to not have them.
Right. You're always gonna have them, and as a cell user, I like having service as well.
Sure.
So our argument is, let's put them in the best locations. Where are the best locations for these? And in our argument, it is not on school properties. Now, Alpine School District is always gonna argue that they want them because they get money from them. And I don't have faith that those people are always taking into account the health and wellness of the kids. They're taking into account how much money they're receiving.
So I know we have one on the cemetery property.
That one hasn't been built yet, but, I mean, they.
Well,
came in and-
that was 5 years ago.
So that's a great place, because their health and safety will not affect them.
But I was on planning commission and we still had people who come in and were very worried.
So, but can we zone them out of a school?
Well, I mean, here's my take, again, I'm putting this back on the Alpine School District, they can say no. We can't say no as a city, we can restrict, but Alpine School District can say, we have a policy, we're not allowing cell towers on our school property.
But because
They
they
can do that.
embrace it for,
That's the issue with Alpine
I know.
School District, that's
We'll
me,
just
it's where the
clarify.
argument.
because I saw a lot of comments that say, let's support Manila Elementary on putting it on our property. So you're getting both sides of the, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
From citizens, you're getting, come on, let's get it put on Manila Elementary. And then you have the other school that have the one saying, don't put it there because it affects our kids.
Just purely out of curiosity, I'm not in this industry, but how much money did cell providers give your school district for?
A lease is about $1,000 to $1,500 a month for the first users.
We're told it was $20,000 over some term. They're usually 50-year terms, 20 to 50-year terms. So once it's there for a long time. And it is great value to the school. We're told also that the money will go directly to Manila, which is great. But I'd rather personally do a lot more fundraisers and maybe pay a little more property tax than have that.
And I think we want to clarify when we were talking about distance on the cell towers. One of the problems that you're having is Sprint is saying, well, you can only be this high. And it's just another one of those loopholes that the cell phone companies are using to control you and say, well, you can only put it at this height, which doesn't actually help Verizon. But it might be something that you want in the verbiage that makes the cell tower companies have to give certain height to their co-locators so that it encourages them to co-locate.
My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, wherever you went, my understanding is the reason why they said they can only be the 60 to 67 feet up is because they had already planned to have some other people co-locate on the
Yes.
tower, and that was the only spot that was left.
Well, that was the deal with the cemetery too, is that AT&T, was it AT&T that was the original?
T-Mobile.
T-Mobile.
But we can look, we can put something up in there, I don't know.
Yeah, 3 co-locations doesn't do you any good in the ordinance if the third co-locator isn't high enough to actually comply with the ordinance.
I'm not aware of how tall this pole is that we're discussing, so.
It's 70
It's a
feet.
75 feet.
So that's why, so if we made everybody do 100-foot tower pole to begin with, then they could fit 3 people on there. But because the original tower is only 70 feet,
Sure.
that limits how many co-locators you can have and how high they can be on the pole, right?
Except for in Manila Park, it is 100 feet. So, but they have 2 other companies that they're working with. They say that are ahead of Verizon now. I don't know, this is all hearsay, what's coming from Verizon, what they've been told by Sprint. But the story was, I guess I should stand up here. the story was all along that Sprint was not communicating with them, that they would say, okay, we'll get back with you. We'll get back with you. Well, when the original application went through, it was approved to be a Clearwire tower. That's what the company was that owned the tower initially. But when Verizon approached them, they were in a acquisition phase, or Sprint was in purchasing the tower from Clearwire. So there was this not sure what they're doing or what we want to do type thing. And so that stalled the communications for a while. And then there was a lack of communications, a lack of response as to what they could or needed to do. It wasn't until, as per the Verizon representatives at the Board of Adjustment meeting, it wasn't until just recently that they were told, well, sorry, we've got 2 others ahead of you, but yeah, if you want, you can be the 4th one on our tower. So that was, of course, unacceptable to them. But so for us as a city to get so deeply involved in the arrangements of telecommunication companies and who's going to do what with the co-location, I'm not sure how deeply involved we can get with that. By tightening up our ordinance here, by saying that we do require it, that by notification from the city that they are required to allow that to occur, and if they don't, then we can revoke the conditional use, which means they have to take the tower down. So I think we have a lot of teeth in it right now, but to get so deeply involved into where and how much and who and when the co-location is to occur, I'm not sure we should be doing that.
So my assumption,
If you have questions, just come up over, yeah.
so say Sprint is the first person that puts in the tower. Do they only put it to the height that they need, or are they required as the first person to put it to the total height for the other people? You know my question.
It's not gonna require them to build a 100-foot tower every time.
They've got different options.
Yeah, we do allow them options there. So when the Clearwire was initially built, it was built at 70, and then it was added up to 100. So they can do that with these towers. They can do initially 70 and then add to 100. So the co-locator can pay for the additional tower. For us to require upfront 100 feet of all cell phone companies, that's I'm not sure if that's fair, because they don't need the 100 feet for one. But when someone else wants to co-locate, they add the additional height.
I just have a question. Is this going to only affect from tonight forward, or people that are in the, it won't affect anyone that's already been given permission? So they are kind of grandfather,
They went through their due diligence already.
Right. So when they say that had this been in place, really there's nothing they could have done to Sprint with this ordinance because they are going off of old rules. Correct?
Niels, did you have a comment?
I do. Thanks. I've been sitting here chomping at the bit, thinking. In regards to the cell towers, I'm a volunteer parent on school community councils for the last 14 years. And I sat in that meeting at Manila Elementary when the school community council, the parents that were there, mothers, and to determine whether to have allow a cell site at that location. There was a lot of discussion, well, where would that cell site be? And come to find out, it would be really close to the school, built on the northeast corner. It was the school community council's vote that that would be permissible. The upside to it, well, let's talk about the downside, because there's no real hard evidence that there's a health concern with a cell tower. Electronics is a hobby of mine. And I had the first telephone in the car, which was a 35-watt system mounted in my trunk, much like the police officers. Aren't those about 35 watt now? The portables are 5 watt, correct? Yeah. And it's my understanding that these cell towers put out 5 watts on those channels, not 35 watt, like some of the major communications that the police use. But I think what is this is the point, the greater concern is that cell phone that puts out a 1/2 watt that's right up against our heads all the time. And our kids that are sent to school with cell phones with that 1/2 watt right against their brain. So my point is 5 watt being emitted from the cell towers is not a concern. But I agree that it really ought to be, how to say it, exhaust all possibilities of any health concern. But right now, there isn't any conclusive evidence. You know, what I've found is opinions are like belly buttons. You may use another term, but everybody has one. And it's amazing, these groups on the internet. I was just looking up a few, you know, health concerns or not on my cell phone on the web, and there's nothing that's conclusive that way. So that's why you can't address it from a health concern. And in my logic, it doesn't appear that it is a health concern. But I want safety for our kids, whatever that is. So what else did I want to make mention to that? So I've been involved in that, and also my home farm that I grew up on is where that Discovery Park is. I milk cows on that site. I love that area that is now owned by the city for the park. And this is my final point. That it was determined by the school community council's parents that were involved, that school community council, that the revenues that the kids could benefit from far outweighed any health concern with the emission of RF radio frequency from a tower. So that's why the decision was moved to go ahead with that site. And see, the point is, the city could receive those revenues, or the kids could receive the revenues. That's kind of the trade-off as I see it. And at the high school, as much as $700 a month to $1,000 a month come in from that present location, that cell site. And that's used directly for the kids in buying, I'm trying to think what they're called, Chromebooks and Kindles, except, yeah, more radiation for them. No, it's not connected to the cell tower, but it is Wi-Fi. But at any rate, for technology and other uses there at the school where it benefits each of those kids. So don't think for a minute that the Alpine School District doesn't care about the health of our kids. We do. We as parents care about it. And I don't mean to be confrontive or combative about that, but in weighing it all out, it seems that's the case, and that it's put to good use, those cell sites. If they're going to be there, instead of the city getting rich off of it, maybe it ought to go directly to the kids. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm Maria Reynolds, 864 West, 1650 North. Part of the reason that these studies are inconclusive is because the research only goes back to 1986. So in less than 30 years, you can't say yay or nay. And federal law mandates that a cell phone is 150 feet away from a home, a residence, because of unknown effects of radiation. Really, nobody's saying that, yes, this happens. We're saying it's a risk, and it's a real risk. So why, if federal law says 150 feet away from a residence, why would we put it right outside of a school where you're there for 6 hours a day, 9.5 months out of the year? So to say it is a risk, it isn't a risk, nobody has that information. But do we want to be the guinea pigs? You know? So I wanted to say, to the other side of that comment, we don't have any information, and that is the problem. It's just too new. And that's all I had to add. Thanks.
I'd just like to defend myself because I feel like I didn't say people who are just random people on the internet who are fluky. I cited the World Health Organization, the FCC, and I also have from the American Cancer Society that says in one study they have found that those who lived in a town that could have exposed them to higher than average RF radiation from cellular phone towers in the previous 5 years had a slightly higher risk of cancer. Some scientists have reported that RF waves may produce other effects in human cells in lab dishes that they're testing right now that might possibly help tumors grow. And also, there was a study which they had interviewed engineers that go out and test these sites, and an engineer who audited more than 3,000 sites found 1 in 10 out of compliance. And the FCC has issued just 2 citations in cell carriers since adopting the rules in 1996 because the FCC says it lacks the resources to monitor each antenna. So they may say it's only going to admit this. Who's policing it? Obviously, since they've only issued 2 citations since adopting the rules in 1996, there's not a lot. So we're asking you to do some of that policing by knowing that, yes, we don't have conclusive evidence, but we do have enough to say that there's a possible risk. And in doing so, we're asking you to make ordinances that protect those who need protecting.
Anyone else?
I know this isn't a trial, and I'm not sure if this is hearsay, but my son-in-law, McKay Clement, worked for Addison, which is a company that puts up cell phone towers. And so he was on the tower all the time. That's what he did. And he was supposed to carry a radiation monitor because it does produce radiation. They didn't require that of him, and that's why he eventually left when they became pregnant with my grandson, who's adorable. It became a huge concern to have him exposed to so much radiation, so he was able to get a different job, but they definitely, absolutely do have radiation.
Anyone else?
Yes, there's a difference between.
Sorry, Bill's just go ahead.
Yeah. There's a difference between working on a cell tower and being right there where it's radiating and being 150 feet away or even 50 feet away. There is a real concern when you're right there where the antenna is and it's radiating. That's why they wear protection. And what it does is it causes retinal damage. But we're talking towers that put out 35 watts plus.
How many feet is it to the school?
What's that?
5 feet.
5.
So that's not 150 feet.
Yeah. Well, 5 feet to the lunchroom, or from that area, it's probably in the trailer, probably about 30 feet. But no, don't hear me not being concerned about the kids. Maybe that tower needs to go out in the field there, that playing field a little more. But anyway, there's a difference from working on the tower and being right there and being 50 feet away. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back up here for discussion. Council, thoughts?
Well, I'm talking as a citizen, right, as a parent. I just don't like them in schools, right? I just don't think I just do it. But what we have before us is different. What we have to make our decision on. So, but that's, I just think they can find other locations, and hopefully this will help by going to Manila Ballpark. But yeah. And I know I've done all my research before we came. I've looked and watched other city councils and what they've gone through, and they're bound because we don't have any hard evidence, right? And so it's hard to take it into factor, but then in the back of your mind, something's always kind of smacking upside the head saying, who knows, right? You never know. Maybe 15 years down the road, they come and say, guess what? This is what's wrong now. But we don't know that. And we can't base our judgment off that. So. I'm not gonna be the only one.
So council, my inclination is to continue because we've talked about changes to language that might be worth exploring. language that we might want to run past the school district before we rule on it here. And so my inclination is to continue this matter.
Well, and I was trying to think of some verbiage that would protect, I mean, how many places in, I mean, we have city property, but there's not very many city properties that, where we don't have the infrastructure to support it. So there's a lot of places, like I loved the cemetery. I was actually on the planning commission when we went through that the first time. And it was in a location where our tall tower wasn't going to be obtrusive either. It was by a power, I mean, it was a smart decision at that point. So I'm just trying to think of other city property. I mean, I just don't know how, I want to be broad enough with the verbiage, but I also want to be very clarifying with it so that, you know, can we, I don't know how many towers I mean, how many pieces of property is this going to affect? How many towers are there going to want in my town?
Those are all really good
Well,
questions.
that we don't know.
If I know Alpine School District, right, the schools, we kind of have an idea, at least in my research in other school districts, right? We know how they're going to feel about this, right? We saw the letter from the principal, because it brings money into the schools that can either bring more electronics or other things that can help, so
And we can't control the school district
Yeah, I don't
as
know
to
if
what
I
they will allow or won't allow. But what we can do is make our ordinance such that we can control what we will allow as a city, within our own city properties. So I think
Could
that's
we
the
actually
task.
designate
That's the
actual
task at hand.
properties and say, these are the ones that are open for cell towers? I mean, could we get that specific?
Theoretically, we could.
Can we actually designate in town possible sites and we just restrict it to that?
Well, we actually, several years ago, before Ken came, we actually created a map of just the city properties alone that we would encourage cell towers to locate on when they came and asked for a place. The problem is that they work on their service areas, right? And so they come and are saying, we need a cell tower within this area to service our customers. That area isn't always gonna jive with our map of, please put your cell tower here on the city property. I mean, but we have done that, and we can certainly resurrect that map and say, you know, here are the locations that we would encourage a cell tower provider to look at first before they look outside in the community. We can certainly do that.
And with the pipe plant and other properties that we have several throughout the city, so we can give them some kind of distribution feel for where they can put a tower.
My concern is unless we completely restrict it to just these properties and not say, we encourage you to go to these ones first, they're say, yeah, we looked at that, but that doesn't work for us. And so they're going to come back with what they want anyway. So I think it's either you restrict it to these specific properties, or as we have now, it is restricted to public properties, which means city-owned properties, parks, schools, those kind of properties. And with that, we do have spread in the community with parks and schools. You do have some spread throughout the community. You take schools out of there, then you're limiting a lot of areas.
But it would still be a conditional use permit. They would still have to.
Oh yeah, it is a conditional use. Either way, it is currently a conditional use.
So are we creating a tug of war between us and the school district by having them stated in our ordinance?
Can we do that?
Well,
I
so
think
would it
the
be
current
better?
language does not specifically address the school.
We can't say what they call that property, right?
Yeah, it just says public property, and what we're doing is, we're not restricting, a cell tower can still come in on private property and ask for a conditional use permit to be on private property. That's not the change we're making. The
Right.
change we're making is to reduce the 1,000-foot distance requirement anywhere in the city to 150 feet on public property. Public property includes anything owned by the school district, the city, the county, the state.
Because I know we have cell towers on private properties in Pleasant Grove.
We do have some, yes.
There's one on a silo near me. So, but it's private property, so you have no,
But we've had instances in the past where people wanted to locate on public property. The city turned them down. They just went right across the property line to the private property owner. It's the same effect, but now the city doesn't get the revenue.
right.
And so and I understand this isn't all about money per se, but we just have to understand that if the city restricts and says, this is part of public property, they can always locate on it. Now, they still have to meet the requirements, can't go on somebody's house, but, it can't go on private property, and then, in essence, it's the same effect without the school or the city benefiting from the same impact, but not receiving revenue.
Any other discussion on
I just wanted to, Ben made this suggestion that we go back and see what verbiage can be added, and I'm scratching my head now because I thought we reviewed that term and felt like that was restrictive enough that there was no need for additional verbiage. And so I'm not sure, with that direction, I'm not sure what we're gonna do with it.
No,
So
I think Tina
with
said
supporting
that
infrastructure, I think that narrows, that kind of satisfies that for me.
Yeah, I got a question, sorry. What's the radius on a cell tower? How far does each have?
You mean
the radiation?
No,
No, whenever it just.
Just the
coverage.
signal.
The rain,
The
covered
Sprint does not have one in town.
rain.
Whatever the distance is, Sprint doesn't have it.
Don't they have the ones in the
I thought they were number
Depends on how
2.
high it is,
Yeah.
and then the one he puts out, but
But we're talking.
basically it's about 5 miles.
All right, I'm gonna
So-
go ahead and call, okay, Ben, do you have a comment?
Well, so I love the aspect of this ordinance proposal that adds teeth to force the co-location or give us a little more leverage when we negotiate co-location. I hear the public saying, and I agree 110%, we ought to get our cell towers where they make the most sense. If it were my world totally, we wouldn't put them on elementary schools probably, but we would put them in high schools where it makes a lot of sense and they're keeping us away from putting them out of direct center. And so there's gotta be some avenue there to achieve the best location possible. But I also hear and recognize, I think it's a very valid, important point, that we don't want to always turn everything into a one-off, let's go before conditional use permitting process and see if we can figure it out each time, because we're gonna end up creating more of these nightmare situations where there's disagreement and there's differing views over what is the best location. So I think it needs to be tightened up. I think it needs to be improved. I think there's some proposals that I've heard tonight that are good language, but I'm not comfortable making this change in its entirety as written.
How would you tighten it
So
up?
can you give them specifics, because if they go back and do it, they're gonna need specific information on how to change the ordinance.
At this point, I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and so the discussion we've had, and there was this proposal that you made kind of off record about perhaps saying municipally owned rather than publicly owned, so that it just impacted the city and didn't impact the school district. And the discussion I heard indicated whether, and so that's a change that might be good, but Scott had indicated, if I heard correctly, that might be valuable to go back to the school district with and discuss.
All I'm saying is, we have people here tonight saying, we don't want them on school property. I'm assuming there's people out there that say, absolutely, we're okay with them on school property for the revenue.
We've heard that.
And so if we're gonna restrict the school district in that manner, then let's have that discussion. My preference is, we adopt what we have, and those residents that don't want this on school district property, take that to Alpine School District and say, make it your policy not to have these on school property. That to me makes more sense than the city restricting the school. Let the school make that decision to restrict themselves. I think we'd be frustrated if they created a policy that's gonna restrict us when we should have that decision on what we wanna do. And that's kind of how I see it. I think Alpine School District needs to be able to tell their people, we're okay with these, and we like them for the revenue, and we don't see health concerns. Or, you're right, there are issues here, let's not have them on school property.
And could I just clarify, I hope, for you, Ben. The language that says to reduce the required separation from 1,000 feet to 150 feet on public property with supporting infrastructure, I think addresses the concern that somehow there's going to be more cell towers out at Manila Elementary, because the only way they can put another cell tower out there is if they already have supporting infrastructure like light poles or something else there. It can't be a cell tower farm because they're still required for the 1,000 feet distance requirement in any other circumstance unless there's something already there like a light pole or another existing cell tower that they can co-locate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does, and I like that aspect of it.
Who is this, the representative for the school board?
Holiday. Ryan Halliday, but would it be going to the representative or just Rob Smith of the school district?
What do you think?
It's not Rob.
Well,
Rob is the
whoever, I mean,
financial
Rob's
guy.
staff,
It's just facilities.
Mr. Halliday's the school board member. I mean, how the process of working it through Alpine School District is probably similar to.
It'd be nice to have them
council.
on your side.
You can talk with staff, and I'm assuming if there's gonna be a policy decision on that, it is gonna be the school board. that's gonna decide.
All right, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2015-27, amending the Pleasant Grove City Code section 10-15-36-D, commercial communications applicable citywide, reducing the required 1,000-foot distance between cell towers.
Motion by Diana.
Second.
Second by Cindy, by voice. Diana?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Ben?
Sure.
Said yes. I'm getting good at that. Okay, the motion has passed and sounds like anticlimactic. The motion has passed unanimously.
Well, I think the reason it's anticlimactic is because we shut the gate after the cow got out, or whatever that term is,
And I'm gonna,
basically, so I think that's why in some terms.
so to
Is that what you say, Robinson? You know what those terms are.
to square, so, aside from us saying square. So, a couple of takeaways that,
School board, city, you want this, every one of them. City, they don't claim none of them. But that's what it comes down to right there. In so many words.
And what the public wants,
Yeah,
really. Yeah, they want their cell phones, so less the towers,
Yeah.
or just,
You've gotta have it.
anyway.
so
But just don't.
the takeaway I have from this is that we need better communication between the boards in our city and the commissions, between the city council, the board of adjustment, and planning commission. That we need to do a better job being proactive and communicating with them when issues come up. Now, sometimes we can't foresee how large an issue we'll get, but that's our job to hopefully try and review that and work with those commissions and boards and be in communication, so we're all on the same page with what's happening with that. And then the other is again, trying to get the notice out to the citizens and make them aware of these big issues going on. And then the CUP, because I feel about some issue as well, is reviewing that with our current boards and commissions that have CUPs come before them and making sure that, again, we're all on the same page. And at the end of the day, they are a separate body, they're gonna make that decision. But there have been some issues in recent months that have come up that we need to make sure that we're addressing, that they have the proper training and the proper, communication and what they need to make those decisions, so we're not finding ourselves after the fact in a decision where something can only be appealed or the decision is final and there's been possibly some errors made. So that's at least what I've taken away, and hopefully we can work with staff on that and our other boards and commissions. So we appreciate you bringing that to our attention, and we will work on those issues because they do affect people's everyday lives, and it's very serious, and I know they try their best. These are planning commission, board of adjustment, but we can always offer more training and communicate better with them to make sure they're making the best decision on behalf of the citizens. So. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to action item 10A, because B and C has been continued.
Would you like a motion on those?
Yes, I would. I'd like to tie up the loose ends.
Yeah.
It has it on there, but I'd rather have a motion.
Let me do that. So council, I move that we continue a public hearing for consideration of adoption of ordinance 2015-28, amending the Pleasant Grove City Code, section 10-9A-8-E, yard requirements in the rural residential zone, reducing the required side yard setback for accessory structures to 3 feet. That action be continued to July 28th.
And I'll second that.
Motion from Ben, second by Diana, all in favor?
Aye. And then I'll move that we continue a public hearing to consider for adoption ordinance 2015-23 to rezone 1 acre of land from the Grove Zone to the commercial sales sub-district to the Grove Zone mixed housing sub-district on property located approximately 100 south, 1300 west in the Grove Zone, commercial sales sub-district, also continued to July 28th.
And I'll second.
Made motion by Ben, second by Diana, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, action item 10A. This is being presented by Ken.
Okay, so we have a final plat for Majestic Meadows. They are the development where the culinary craft building is located, and there's a dentist and doctor's office out front. They're wanting to expand their development further, so in keeping with their original plan to have separate lots. Excuse me.
Like they want to build a tower?
What? Sorry. So this is in the CG zone, and I just realized that my pen light here is dying. It's hard to have any light on it, so this is State Street, and it's just at the bend. So you've got Macy's over in this corner, and you've got the Main Street Geneva Road over here. So 220 South goes right underneath it. You got the rodeo grounds right across the street here.
Is that their building right there?
Well, this is just the zone map, so let me move forward here. You've got State Street and 220 South right here. Then you've got a couple of existing buildings which are not a part of this development. You've got an existing office building in this location, and culinary craft would be up right in here. So it is in this area that they're wanting to further subdivide the property as shown here. So they're creating lots 4, 5, and 6. So you've got 1, 2, and 3. So they got quite an odd shaped lot here. That is because this part here is storm drainage area. It's already been set up to be that, adjacent to storm drainage property next door. I'm sorry, no, that's you've got the storage units right there, but this is already prepared to be storm drainage. So really the developable area of this lot is right here, then another building in this area and another one there. So just further development. This would be the last phase of the development of this Majestic Meadows. So this has been at preliminary level to the Planning Commission and was approved, and staff recommends approval of this final plat.
Just as information, what are they anticipating on that lot 6?
It's speculative at this point, but on this lot right here, it's most likely going to be an office building and an office building there. This could be more the expandable type, either commercial or office or commercial warehouse type of a situation.
This is not a public hearing, so we'll bring it in for discussion. Any comments from the council?
I don't have any questions.
Yeah, look for a motion.
So what is the zoning right through there? Is it all office? Can they?
It's CG, commercial, general commercial, which is our most broad commercial zone. It permits just about everything that's in the commercial category.
Have you told them we want a steakhouse?
They know.
Roots Chris.
They actually own this property here, but it's not a part of their development here. But we've told them, you know, best use of that corner is a restaurant.
Okay, look for a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve a final plat for a 3-lot subdivision called Majestic Meadows, commercial subdivision plat C on property located at 220 South State Street, the CG General Commercial Zone.
I'll second it. Motion by Ben, second by Diana, all in favor?
Aye.
Are any of the applicants, is the applicant here, anybody representing them?
Reed Swenson was concerned that he might not be able to make it. I told him I wasn't aware of any big concerns, but of course he understands that if you wanted to continue it, you could, but. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yay.
Thanks for coming.
I now know a lot about cell towers. I'll try to forget, but thank you.
Okay, item 10B, to consider the approval of the request of Joshua with Georgetown Development for a 68 lot mixed housing development. And this is Ken again.
Okay, so recently the council approved the site plan for the Garden Grove mixed housing development. And so that's located on 1300 West and approximately 100 North. It is in the mixed housing subdistrict of the Grove Zone. Adjacent property here is in the commercial sales subdistrict. So currently there are 2 homes on the property. The Robinson and Bean family own these properties and are under contract to have this developed or sold and developed by the developers of the Garden Grove proposal. And this is the northern half of the site plan that you saw previously. And I'm sorry, I forgot to add the site plan slide on here to show that to you. But if you'll recall, this would be the northern half. So you've got 1300 West or Proctor Lane right here. You've got a row of live work units. So they have commercial on the bottom floor that face onto 1300 West. And then you've got single family homes on small lots on the north end and in through the middle. Then there would be more down and through here, single family homes. And then on the back end, you've got the townhomes. So this is a portion, this is actually phase 1 of the development. So this item is twofold. It has the plat A, which is only phase 1. And then the second portion of the item would be the phasing plan, which is just this. So it says future phase 2 right here. So this would show the entire development in through here. So plat A is just this area, which would be their first phase. So the entire plat, a preliminary plat included the entire development. And so that was approved by Planning Commission, and the developers have chosen at this time to only go forward with plat A, and will come forward at a future time with plat B. So we recommend approval.
Is this the 39?
39 units, yes. So you've got 5 live work units right here. You've got, looks like 9 of the townhomes in the rear. And then the bulk of the rest is a small lot, single family homes.
Guys, bring it back up here to the council. Any discussion, questions, comments, concerns? Nope.
Start digging.
Yes, the applicant is here, John Dester, if you'd like to talk.
We recognize him.
It's just working it out with their engineering department as far as the last things that need to be done and get the plat recorded and the water bond and stuff like that. So as fast as we can. Really, we want to get going now. So the year is going by, yeah, the month. So thank you guys. Thanks for your consideration.
I don't think we have any questions because you've been so very good. Have explained everything.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, look for a motion.
Mayor, I move that the city council approve proposed 39 lot final subdivision called Garden Grove Plat A, located at approximately 15 South, 1300 West, in the Grove Mixed Housing Subdistrict, and adopting the exhibits, conditions, and findings of this.
A motion by Eric,
I'll second.
second by Ben, all in favor?
Aye.
No, are we okay that it said 68 lot?
I went off what's in our
No, I just,
Dropbox.
What do you mean?
on the agenda, it says 68 lot. mixed housing, but we're only approving 39.
If they're phasing, I don't know that Ken
But we-
explained that.
It's the
No, I did
it's
hear
the
that
final
phasing,
plat.
but I'm
It's the
concerned
final
with how
plan
it's
and
printed,
phasing
but
plan
versus
and the
what
phasing
we
plan.
approved.
So I need to just restate 68. And then to
I just want to
68.
make sure.
You
it's
just
right.
second
the amendment.
You said 68 to
Okay,
begin
no,
with.
that's
No, I
right.
said
That's
39.
okay. But you didn't.
And phasing plan.
Seconded with the phasing plan.
Motion by
Sorry.
Eric, second motion by Ken.
We just want to make sure everything's.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. Everything's got it. Okay, agenda item 10C, to consider adoption resolution authorizing the mayor to sign a lease purchase agreement with Zions First National Bank for the purpose of acquiring 6 public safety vehicles.
So we have a lease,
We have a, right.
we're almost
Oh, Scott's
We have
ready to,
2
like-
items left. And I just, and I,
But Scott, every time you
I
say that,
saw
it
you
goes
walk
an hour
out.
longer.
No, let's do it.
Do it, no.
Okay, go.
I just went to the bathroom, so I'm okay. We have a lease program with our police vehicles where every 3 years we switch out a third of our fleet. We have a negotiated buyback price with our vehicles that we're switching out. And through that lease program, we sell them back for a certain rate and then we get 6 new vehicles. So this lease agreement is with Zions Bank. They're the ones who finance the money up front, and then we pay it out over 3 years. So we've been doing this, I want to say, for 3 or 4 years now with our police vehicles. And this is the necessary step in order for us to keep that program going.
Discussion, questions for Scott?
I've got one question for Scott and Tina. Having read through the lease agreement, there are a couple of representations that we make that just aren't factually accurate. I don't know if it matters or standard language, but there are things in there that say, like, after having heard the preceding week's minutes, the council voted on this resolution. And so there are a few things in there that are in the language here that I noticed aren't our traditional procedure here. I don't know if that matters, if we want to strike the language that isn't accurate.
Strike that.
So that would be my
That's just
recommendation.
standard things that come from the.
Standard contract.
Yeah, it's boilerplate, but it's something that I just thought, given that it's not actually true.
Yeah, if you want to email that to us, Ben, we'll strike it if, just in the motion to say to strike the things that Ben sends us, and we'll do that.
That gives me great.
Assuming it doesn't change the fundamental agreement that we have.
Yeah. Okay, and this information, we've had our packet, and Dean's doing a great job with that, the program. Okay, any other questions or concerns?
No, let's hurry.
I like works. Looking for a motion?
I'll make the motion that we adopt resolution 2015-026, authorizing the mayor to sign a lease purchase agreement with Zions First National Bank, Salt Lake City, Utah, for the purpose of acquiring 6 public safety vehicles and providing for an effective date and reviewing an email from Ben.
Well, I can give you the specific. It's page 18 of the agreement, page 55 of our packet, where it says, after the review of the preceding minutes read and approved, which I just don't think actually happens in the way that we do things.
After and
So that
taking into consideration that sentence.
perfect.
Second.
Okay, motion by Diana, second by Eric, by voice. Diana?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Sid, yes. Ben?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. All right, we're now on to item 10D, Kathy's going to present. This is to consider the appointment of poll workers, touchscreen technicians, and precinct managers for the August 11th municipal primary election.
The state code requires, state code 20A5602, that the municipality, body appoint poll workers at least 15 days before the state or local election. County contributes all of those poll workers. They're all registered voters in the county. Some of the names you may not recognize because Gorham City is doing all vote by mail. So we.
That's the only way you can vote?
Well, they'll have
They're doing something
like they'll have a station, I guess, election day. But so, actually poll workers, and since it's county run, they require that their poll workers be trained.
Okay. All right.
We're just still publishing.
And this is new this year, our electronic voting. And it's gonna be a new procedure that we do from here on out, hopefully, if everything goes well.
Do 4 by mail in 2 years, but we'll talk about that
Okay,
later.
we will, we're just inching closer and closer, Kathy, to making your job easier. Okay, so any other questions for Kathy?
Yeah, I've got one. So 2 years ago, we had just 2 polling locations, right? But this opens that up again.
Yes, because the county is basically doing it. They're not really running the election, but we're just using their
Technology.
Their
They're recommended.
And I asked, Scott Vincent, and Apple County, I told him, after I only did 2, look at rallies, I go, no.
So they want to do it. So this is a
Yeah.
county request to have this many polling in these specific locations, or? Okay.
And is there any time difference with the county, counting or anything with getting the results back or things like that?
It should be quicker, I'm hoping, but they are doing, contracting more cities this year, so it'll be like it was last year when we did the bond, and I just, they come out, they'll put it on their website.
But they have to take the cards down to the county, don't they?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more travel time for the poll workers. The actual counting should be quicker because it's.
Okay, and this is, we have our, on the website, the locations happened for a while, is that right? Yes. Okay. Right, perfect. Wait, did we, do something for motion? You guys gonna make a motion?
I'll make a motion, that we appoint poll workers, touchscreen technicians, and precinct managers for the August 11th, 2015 municipal primary election as proposed and discussed.
Motion by Ben. Second. Second by Diana, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We've moved discussion 10E to next week. We're now on to neighborhood, let's see, discussion items for the July 28th council meeting.
We have an item on there, it's gonna take a few minutes, so we probably
On
need
this?
to take a break.
Okay. Scott, I told you, I said, don't jinx it, and
You're right.
look what happened. We're gonna go ahead and motion for a bathroom break.
Very nice. Am I the only one?
Would you like to talk to us now, just during this fire break, or would you like to have us reopen? Because we can make a motion to reopen the open session. We wanted to put it in open session, so it wasn't on right up on the agenda.
I'm being very sarcastic.
We didn't think that was coming in.
I'm on 60. Natural gas. You guys put it. I'm on out there. And that's so. No, you're on your side. Oh, I should have one end of it.
I'm comfortable with that. We take a motion to council or the mayor pro tem has discretion to reopen the open session. So I'll make the motion. I'd be happy to hear what you have to say about fireworks.
As soon as we move back into session, we can do that officially.
After the bathroom break, so in about 5 minutes, we'll let you tell us what's on your mind.
I came home.
Because usually I'm able to come in and sit down.
Yeah, it was a crowd.
I thought, man, yeah, hanging there.
No, there were some awards for the police department, so they're allowed.
And then I came home to the zoo. Yeah. His brother, what? Didn't shake it.
Huh?
Didn't shake it.
What's available is over there.
But yeah, we were hiking and then we got home and like, we got out of the can and it was 6. I'm like, dang it, I'm not trying to change. I guess I'll just go slow. I don't think I smelled too much.
It's got
Too many on the list.
Yeah.
I didn't have boots on it.
I don't know, I couldn't see your feet.
Yeah.
I was behind the window. So no more videos.
I did.
No more videos.
Go to any. You're right. Give the council a staff these two.
He doesn't look like it's traffic.
$19.4 million, $12.4 million?
No, yeah, the first proposal was 19 million, the first bond effort was like 16 or 17 million. And then the second bond effort was 12.6 million, but there was $1 million that they have brought here. So it has been. Yeah. It was 4.6 shows up because of the way the premium bonding is a subtle thing in the way that accounting works, but you would have actually paid back.
I'm wondering about that.
Yeah, when something goes wrong. You have a higher bond value because of the way that you structure it. So, yeah, you pay more of your interest. I'd have to study on it, but it's accounting mechanism. So we get 13.6 million. What we listed on the ballot is 12.6 because we have flexibility over how we.
I didn't even get to see it. I actually.
I was so surprised to walk in, I was like.
See, over the time that I've been in the office, we've seen an increase in participation. They realize that points are being made, they want to be heard, they want to be involved. I think that's a great thing. I think.
Working on getting. And then I go downtown next week. No, she's
You work with Zoom and everything?
I volunteered, but I was doing sure. And I just never done that. I was like, oh, you're my bishop. I've been to the building a couple times, but it was more like,
What was
there's anybody here? But, well, it's just really kind of mostly up to
For that.
because I was more responsible here. But it hasn't been like working. I do like, I basically clean up, I took out stalls, Nyala, just kind of like. Really adorable athletes.
I talked to him privately.
Mostly so it was all my parents. But, they were funny. If they're outside, they have to be together. But if they're inside, but if you try to put them on opposite sides of the wall, they freak out. So they have to be like next to each other, but not the same.
BRCA will.
No, he'll be like.
$1 million. And they've got all the facilities for motels, all the entertainment.
Oh, yeah, they want to get out now, so that they're not, yeah, and personal assistant work about 30 hours a week. Trying to help my second.
Wow.
Sorry. I actually just kind of wanted to bang it, so. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and let's review the agenda for next week, Scott.
Okay.
We got 2 minutes.
We have well, we have an item here that's gonna take a few minutes.
Okay. So,
Do we have somebody that wanted to?
yeah, we do. Hi. You wanna come on up? We're gonna, he said he got here at 6:30. It was packed and he had an item for the open session. So if you wanna come on up to the podium and give us your name and address and let us know your concern, that would be great.
Kind of forgot my name, but I guess my name's Fred.
Okay,
I've lived in Pleasant Grove all my life. Anyways, I had 5 items, but I only want to address one, the really important one tonight.
Okay.
The one that I think we need to be concerned about is how many of you people looked around and seen all the dry grass fields right around in town even? And we're allowing fireworks to be set off on the 24th of July. I'm thinking is we need to reconsider and maybe have a, I hate to say it, but I don't want some field burned down and then catch on fire a place where a little kid or somebody's living and they can't get out. And, I can cite a couple of big ones right now. One's only about, half a block right here back of your log cabin. The kid burned down, one spark and that burned down in 20 seconds or a minute. And them fireworks they allow now were different than they allowed 5 years ago. Now they go up twice as high and they're all over the place. Before they used to be kind of in the parks and that, but now every person on the block's got them. And I don't know whether the fire department can justify a temporary ban of fireworks as far.
Let's go ahead and ask Chief Thomas. Chief, is that a state regulation on the fireworks? How does that work? And do you feel confident that if there were an accident?
It is state regulated.
Okay.
We do have some restrictions in place up along the foothills. There are distances and maps that are in place and are on the website for review. So those restrictions are in place. As far as fields that are in and about town, then we're prepared to fight fires there. We haven't had any yet. We've had a couple of real small ones. We haven't had any significant fires in any fields within the city limits.
So we've been very, very lucky, I think.
Well,
On the 4th of July, I had, we call them rockets, bottle rockets,
Aerials.
bottle rockets on my lawn and on my roof. And, you know, they're all over the city. So, you know, maybe there isn't people set off fireworks over here, but I don't know. I'm really concerned. Maybe I'm over concerned, but I've never seen it this dry for a long time in Pleasant Grove. The last time I seen it this dry when the whole mahogany burned up, if you can remember that. It burned up on the, I think, the 24th of July because people setting off illegal above the canal. Now, is above the canal illegal?
That's right.
Yeah.
So people above the canal are safe. People below the safe are in trouble. They've got to watch their homes.
There's a line we call it the urban
Okay.
rural interchange interface.
It's called the urban rural interface. And in the past, we have enacted ordinances that
Okay.
would restrict the fireworks above the canal. 2 years ago we did, and we put out maps.
Yeah.
This year, there was no recommendation to be stricter than what we already are. And so there is a 150-foot buffer zone between the foothills and where the residential areas start, that there's not allowed to be any fireworks at all. But we didn't restrict it down in town as much as we have in the past.
Yeah. So it's not just above the canal, it's clean to the fire break road.
It's up there a ways.
Anyways, you got businesses down here that could go up any minute. Come right down across the road from, I'm trying to think of the name anyway. It's the post office road coming up. There's Russian thistle, this tall, 20, 30 feet path of them. The only way they'd be safe is they're in a steel building. If a firework went off there, I can tell you this, to me, it's pretty explosive this year, but you know, I'm only one person and I wish you guys could at least maybe post on the thing that don't be setting them off by dry fields.
That's definitely something we can do. We can put a notice maybe on a slider on our homepage stuff. It just is a reminder about fireworks and how dry it's been. Would that be possible? Yep. We'll get a slider on our website.
Okay, that would help because, you know, young kids don't realize how fast them things can catch fire.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts because that is an important issue. Our fire department is ready and prepared and we put some regulations in place. We can always do more noticing, so we appreciate
Yeah,
that.
but they don't need to practice if somebody gets killed, darn it, you know?
No, they're gonna get there in time.
No, I mean, the fire guy might even get killed. Or burned up, or burned. Anyway, thanks.
Timely reminder.
Yeah, thank you.
Be safe.
Okay, we'll go ahead and Scott, you wanna review the agenda with us?
Yeah, so we have Judge Bullock, who has requested to come and meet with the council regarding our prosecutor position. Right now, we have a part-time position funded. It's been that way for a long time. Because it is a part-time position and it's a position that we have generally somebody who has a law degree that does this. It tends to be a little bit of a revolving door, just we're asking for highly skilled people to work part-time. So he would like to address the council on kind of his thoughts and having the city consider that. And so he'll present his case and then we can discuss how we want to proceed after that. 9A is public hearing on our storm drain impact fee items that we went over a few weeks ago. Matt Millis from Science Bank will be here. Dean will be here to help direct that discussion and make sure everybody understands what's going on. I can't speak to it tonight to give you any sort of expertise on that, but those two.
Is that the discussion, Scott, where we'll talk about a 10-year, 25-year, or is that a different discussion?
So the 10-year, 25-year storm is a different discussion on us changing our master plan. Now, if we decide to change our master plan, then we could go back and do a quick update of our storm drain impact fee at that time. But at this point, we've been working on this for a couple of years now. And so we're to a point where we're looking for action from the council to implement. Ken, do you want to cover 9B on the side yard setback?
Okay, this item came forward to Planning Commission at their last meeting, and it was actually continued onto their upcoming meeting on Thursday night because there was concern that the request wasn't addressing everything that the Planning Commission wanted to address. So this will be coming forward to you with their recommendations of further changes based on some of the staff proposals. Now, some of that was egged on by our recent Sterling Boren situation. If you're familiar with the shed that was approved by conditional use permit and is now being challenged at the next Board of Adjustment meeting by an appeal by a neighbor. But with that going on, staff decided to look at the accessory structures ordinances that we have in both our residential R1 zones and the rural residential zone. At this same time, this separate applicant came forward for something that he wanted to do on his RR zone property, which would be to reduce the setback requirement. We looked at the zoning differences for accessory structures between the RR zone and the R1 zone. We had a discussion about, is there a true difference, or should there be a true difference between how we regulate accessory structures in an RR zone versus an R1 zone if they're not dealing with animals? As we've looked at how the RR zone has developed over the last decade or so, it has not developed as we had originally envisioned long ago, where it would be small farms and everybody would have a horse and you'd have this large field in the backyard or whatever. You don't have those anymore. I mean, there are some in existence. There's some in existence that were there many years ago, but as far as any new ones, there's hardly any. There might be a handful. Mostly what's happening in the RR zone are large estate homes that have big homes that take up more space. And by the time you compare that with a smaller home on a smaller lot, the impact is the same. So as far as adding an accessory structure in the rear yard of a RR zone with a large home and a large yard and everything, we felt like there wasn't really enough difference between the RR zone and how it's developing and the R1 zone. So we're looking at the accessory structure requirements for all of those zones, even though this particular request came up separately from an individual who would like to see the setbacks reduced for what he wants to do. But we told him what else was going on, and so he was at that point felt courage to make application for something that would affect the entire RR zone. So in essence, what we are doing now is we are making some recommendations that would reduce the RR zone setback in some instances for accessory structures to match that of the R1 zone requirements. We're looking at making some other changes that would affect all of those zones. Some of those, I'll just read through what we have here. It would make requirements similar to the R1 zones except for animal structures. Setbacks graduate depending on height, starting at a 3-foot minimum setback for a 12-foot height structure. And then for every 1 foot additional height, there's a 1 foot additional setback. Size being restricted to 12% of the minimum lot size for that zone. So currently, we have a provision in the code that says they can't be more than 10%. But you can go to the planning commission and get a waiver of that for conditional use permit. And we've had, over the years since I've been here, quite a few of those that have come forward and been approved. And there's no cap on how big that can be through the conditional use permit. We felt like that has become a problem. There are a few of them that are presenting problems because there is no cap that we ought to look at. And we've got some modeling that we will show you next week that will show how this size of a building looks in this size of a yard with this kind of a setback. So we're with that type of research, we're proposing something that we feel is a reasonable sized structure for a residential area, because there are some structures that just get too big. They don't belong in a residential neighborhood. Somebody wants a 50 by 50 foot warehouse building, they should build that in an industrial zone, not in their backyard.
12%.
So it depends on, so again, what we did is we've kind of played out the numbers and drew it out. So currently the 10% limitation, but that can be exceeded by conditional use permit, allows in an R18 zone, which is a lot of the areas through here are R18, R19, R10. R18 would allow an 800 square foot building, which 40 feet by 20 feet is a 800 square foot building in a R18 zone. So if you go to R19, then it allows a 900 square foot building. You go to R10, it allows for a 1,000 square foot building. So it goes up depending on the minimum lot size in that zone. So when we looked at an RR, which allows a half an acre, which is almost 22,000 square feet, then 10% is 2,200 square feet. That's a big building for an accessory structure. So we felt like, and there have been instances where we've had larger than that approved. So we felt like there's need to limit this. So we'll talk more about that. We'll get into more detail on how we came up with that. Heights from 18 feet to 25 feet, which need to be approved by conditional use permit.
So the 12 foot height.
As long as they're meeting the setback, then that can be approved by staff if it reaches 18 feet. Now currently, go ahead, Eric.
So I think you're going to touch on it, so I'll let you go.
Okay, so currently we do have a requirement, if it exceeds 18 feet, then we have a requirement to notice the neighbors within 100 feet of that proposed location to see if there's any opposition to that. And then if there is any opposition logged with us, then we will schedule a conditional use permit. Well, in almost every instance that occurs, there's somebody who has a problem with it. So we just felt like that's an extra step we just need to eliminate. We just automatically, if it's exceeding 18 feet, it's conditional use permit. We don't have to go out there and see if possibly somebody objects. We'll just go ahead and schedule a conditional use permit. I'm sorry.
Height of the house.
Yes, so and another thing is that it cannot exceed the height of the home.
Are we still putting up those signs on the property?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so another thing with RR zones is a lot of these things are not currently in the RR zone, but they're in the R1 zone. So we're just taking all of that, putting in the RR zone as well. So we haven't had design requirements on RR zone buildings, but we're saying anything that exceeds 500 square feet needs to have some color matching and materials matching of at least 30% of all sides of the structure so that it fits in as a residential structure. And this would not apply to animal structures. Then animal structures have a separate setback requirement. They have to have a 20-foot rear yard setback, 75 feet minimum from a neighboring home, and 50 feet from the home of that property. And then we're taking out the waiver ability for any of these requirements. It just is. You can't go and seek a waiver for these requirements. And I think that waiver has been a headache for us, and that's been the cause of some of our hearings that are still causing problems.
And passionate.
Yeah. So anyway, we will get into more detail on this ordinance next week.
Okay, thanks, Ben.
Okay,
So there's the John Hart rezone request.
okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So this has come before you before, and we just had some miscommunication with the applicant. And so he has agreed that the 28th is a good time. Next week is a good time for him to come. So his request then is to take approximately 1 acre and rezone it to mixed housing. So his location, and we did talk about this a little bit at a previous meeting. You got Proctor Lane, 1300 West right here, and the tonight's approval of the plat and phasing plan for the Garden Grove up at that location. So the new road would come right through this point and bisect his property and leave this little piece here, which he felt rendered it not very useful as a commercial property. And so he wanted to have that piece of property rezoned to mixed housing.
Scott, the ordinance amending the compensation schedule, we discussed this in previous meetings, but this is just a follow-up with more information that they requested.
Yes, and so we want to go over that with you tonight, so that if you have any things you want to change for next week, you can get that direction.
All right.
So I've asked David, who's done most of the research on this, I'll let him explain. One thing we didn't go in depth on 2 weeks ago was the methodology on how we came up with these ranges. So, and we received some feedback from the council at the time. So David's going to go into a little more detail on the methodology behind the ranges and then show some of the information.
Because if we don't see it happen, we don't think it did.
I understand that. So I want to show you a couple different kind of summary slides, and then maybe one more piece of information is in your packet in the Dropbox. And if you have questions, we can go from there. You can see up here, we've got kind of the summary slide of the different positions that we're talking about, the previous range from the 2009 ordinance that we talked about, the new proposed range, and you asked for that percent change. And that's based off of the minimum to minimum.
So the previous range was the 2009?
2009, yes. The three that don't have the previous range weren't included in that ordinance. We of course didn't have the engineer as a department head level at that point. And the library was under the Parks and Rec at that point as well.
Chief building official.
And
So it's a statutory position that we should have a range for the council administrator.
Dave Houston.
Dave Houston.
Dave Houston.
mm-hmm. And then
So there's, sorry, go back. There's the percent change from 2009 to the proposed range. You see it ranges 19%, 15%, 21%. So if we annualize that over the 6 years, it's roughly 3% a year. The range would have increased if we would have done this yearly. So
So is that somewhere on these charts?
no, that's just an explanation of what that number is. If we want to,
I think that would be really crucial to have, that if we had done these on a yearly basis versus waiting this many years, 6 years, to make it, I think that, for me, I would like to see that number on there.
okay.
Had
So
we done this on a yearly basis, it would be a 3%, which is basically a pretty average COLA or merit raise.
that's right. So we
I
we
think
could
it
create
needs to
another
be there.
column that we can show the annualized.
I don't know about anybody else, but I know with the questions that are coming up, that we're jumping from here to there. But, okay, well, it is 19%, but if we'd done it on a yearly basis, it's just like the utilities. You know, if we'd done it on a yearly basis instead of waiting like has happened in the past, then I think that's really crucial to know that that's a 3% increase per year.
Yeah, it might be helpful to city's point to have kind of parentheticals, previous range from this year, you know, in
Yeah.
parentheses, and proposed range for
The
today.
previous range.
Because they're gonna see
2009.
that percent change, people are gonna see that percent change and go, oh my gosh, they've gotten a 19%. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and maybe we'll just eliminate that column and just have the
I would.
annualized change.
I would do 3% a year.
Well, yeah, so we want to, I mean, to your point, we want to illustrate the year over year as
Exactly.
opposed to the.
Big lump.
And actually, we could have both those, that's not a problem. I mean, I think we just want to make sure everybody understands the flow of how the numbers work, because for the ones that are 13% and 6%, those are gonna be less than a 3% annualized. So each one will be slightly different, and we'll have David figure that out.
I want to make sure, this doesn't mean that everyone's getting this raise, this is just the ranges that if we were to get a raise that are comparable to neighboring communities.
Yeah, so the whole purpose of what we're doing is we're required by state law that if ranges are gonna change, the city council has to approve them for appointed officials. So that's myself, the department heads, and a couple other statutory positions. So we adopt the ranges, and that's what's in front of the council is the range, and then what the individual is paid within that range. And so they can't be paid in excess of what the maximum range is, and technically they shouldn't be under what the minimum is. And so there's that's all we're doing is talking the ranges. The actual salaries for individuals aren't going to change, with the exception of a couple employees who probably don't meet the minimum. And then we're gonna have to discuss those and figure out, because ideally we would change that, I would hope, pretty soon. But I don't know if that causes concern with the public that we're changing salaries because of the ranges. But if we would have updated our ranges all along, those salaries should have been in line all along. And we haven't done this in 6 years, and from here on out, we're gonna do it every year. I mean, this is a function of us just not doing something we should be doing every year.
So to the methodology, it's based on a market study of the 11 comparable cities that we've determined as our benchmark cities. And we've taken the actual salary of those positions based on reports from a database that we're involved in called TechNet is the company compensation survey that they do. And we took the actual salary of those that reported the position. Some of the cities don't have that position or contract out or various things that make it not completely apples to apples. But based on that actual average, we've put the midpoint based on that average so that the average really does fall right within the middle. And then you determine the range surrounding that. And that's what we've done formulaically to make that happen. We've asked some other cities within the benchmark, which you asked us to do to determine their methodology. Their methodology turned out to be the exact same as ours. Lehigh does the market survey. They actually have the company TechNet do the market survey for them, do that market study. They take the average and then they put the range between 40 and 45% of the min. Ours was determined at 45% here. The other cities that I talked to, there was a couple others, they both said that they did market surveys and then created the range surrounding the actual average, which we came up on our own, and it's nice to know that they were following the same methodology that we did. Let's go to the next. This is some information about the different benchmark cities. The blue are the cities that are in our benchmark that we used previously. The gray are cities that we wanted to add for comparison's sake.
For income.
And
revenue.
the two points of data on here is the population, which is the bar graph, and then their general revenue number is that gray line, which shows up green for cash and different versions. But here we got those two different data points. And then Pleasant Grove, I put us in there twice so that you can see us within our benchmark cities and then within all those additional comparable cities. The population numbers, Lehigh was the highest at 52, down to Springville, which was at
16.2.
They were at 23, I believe, or 26. So what you can see here is that there's a couple of different cities where revenue dips in relation to kind of the trend of population: Riverton, Pleasant Grove, and Kaysville. There's a couple where it jumps up, and American Fork is one of those. When you add these additional cities to it, we did those just for comparative purposes. You asked us to look at that. We did cities that basically ranged, other than Orem, which was nearby, and somebody made the comment, well, we look at them for utility rates, so why don't we look at them for other things as well? So that's why that information is there. The others are within the population range of 10,000 above or below us, with the two exceptions of Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs, which are just a couple thousand outside of that 10,000 range on the low end. But as their neighboring cities, we included them as well.
So the ones in the gray are currently not in the study. This was for the purposes of showing you on this graph, but we're not benchmarking their salaries. So we wanted to illustrate that. That was something that was asked is, because the comparison cities and the issue becomes is we're not going to find 10 cities that exactly are like Pleasant Grove, that have the exact population, the exact revenues, the exact services provided. So generally speaking, what you do is you try to find those that are alike, and then you use those as your benchmarks. So it's not always going to be apples to apples. And the more data you have, then hopefully the more valid your numbers are. And so we thought when we initially put this together, to have 11 benchmark cities, that's pretty good. Now, not every city has a fire chief. Some cities have a fire chief but a volunteer department. So again, when we start talking the apples to apples, it just gets a little difficult. So we're trying to do something that has some statistical significance that we can hang our hat on, with the understanding that it's just not going to be perfect, whatever we do.
Right.
That was one that we wanted to make sure the council understood the methodology, and David's going to go a little bit more into how we get the information from the individual cities. But when it comes to the picking of our benchmark cities, if there's a feeling that we want to do that a different way, or we want to add cities or take cities out, if council wants to give us direction, that's fine. This is the methodology we came up with when we put this together a year ago or a year and a half ago, because we started this with all of the employees, not the appointed staff. This is just we just got around to updating the appointed staff's salary ranges. We did a lot of other ones last year throughout the city.
And I will say that the number of different data points that we're able to get through the database and the report really is just the starting point. We definitely look at it from that point and try to use some common sense and just some common judgment there to be able to look at it and say, this is the starting point and these are what the numbers generate. But are there other circumstances we need to take into account and things like that. So it isn't all formulaic. It isn't just run reports and spit out numbers, that there is a level of analysis that goes into it beyond that.
Yeah, and so part of the common sense approach, and Lehigh is a good example of a city that has probably double the revenues and their population is 17,000 more than us. So why do we have them as a comparison city? Well, one reason would be they are a competitor for employees as far as a market. And we could say the same thing about Orem, but we don't compare to Orem because you look at statistically where they're at on that chart, that's way off. But if the city of Lehigh being in the benchmark was causing some heartburn, then that's a city we could eliminate if that's what the council wants to do. But that was our reasoning for having Lehigh in there as far as part of the benchmark study.
Yeah, it would be easy to change some of those or add some of these other cities if you'd like, in order to start that process over a little bit. The rest of the information in the packet that you have there, these are just a PDF version of the Excel spreadsheets that we worked it from. But then there's a tab for each city, or sorry, each position that shows all of the different data from all the different cities for each position. And so you can look through that and see if there's anything there position by position, if you'd like to look at as well. The second page is one that I'd like to look at just briefly. We totaled up we made a little matrix of all of the different cities and all of the different positions and all of the different, essentially, data points that they provided for us. So you can see that we've got 11 different benchmark cities, but not every single one of them had the position. So some of these, for example, the city administrator, there's 10 benchmark city reports there that we have, or cities that responded. Others we have 11, and that just varies position by position based on the cities that provided it. So there's quite a lot of information in there for you to look at. And if you have questions leading up to next week, I'm available, and Scott's definitely available.
So I have a question or a thought. So can we go back to the other screen? So let's go back to 2007, for instance, and let's pick one position. Say, would it be valuable to know where that person was in the minimum to maximum at 2009?
You mean the 2009?
Mm-hmm.
So are
And
you
then
talking about
also-
the actual salary?
The actual person and the actual salary. And also when it becomes in the proposed range, where people are.
So you want the actual salaries listed on there?
So, okay, so say our city administrator the minimum was 91,261 and the max was 132,174. Where was the city administrator in that?
I don't
At that
know.
time?
I can tell you. Oh, sorry.
Well, but my question is I'm not sure that's how that's relevant to the ranges, because we're talking ranges, we're not talking about actual salaries.
Right, but for some reason in this discussion amongst a lot of people, it is the question. It's the range plus it is what they are making. So I guess my point is, say your minimum, between your minimum and your maximum and the mid, where are you?
Yeah, right at about the mid.
Okay, so I think that's a point that we need to let people know. You're not making 157.
Well, so I think we discussed that a couple weeks ago. Again, we didn't have the numbers. If we want to talk actuals, in some ways that's a different discussion, but
Right.
if the council wants to talk actuals, we can talk actuals. But what we're looking to approve is ranges.
I understand that, but does the community understand that? And it's the community right now that we're answering to.
Okay, so if the community's asking the question where all these people fit in the range, then we can list the actuals next to that, if that's what the council wants.
I'm just throwing it out there. If the rest of the council doesn't want to go there, that's fine. But I think if we do it for proposed, we need to do it where it was in the previous two.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. I mean, it's just gonna answer a lot of questions.
I mean, they're gonna find it on the state website of who knows who.
It's public information.
It's public information, so it's not like we're hiding anything. To be more transparent, let's put where our people are at the time.
Okay.
As one of the things, and I also want it for 2009.
Okay.
I don't know that I really care, but I think Scott's point may be that if we start putting in actuals, there is a greater likelihood people are confused about what's being done in this particular action, right? I mean.
I agree, but
kind of two
the
different
major
things, but-
conversation, so with the city at the moment is where people are.
So I'm thinking of this as a recruiting tool, and you're
Right.
thinking this is a.
Only
fair-
because it's become that.
Oh, I am not aware of
From the
what.
community.
Okay.
Because the community is putting things on Facebook that they're finding on websites that is stating what people's salaries are.
Okay.
So why don't we give them the full truth, the transparent truth about what everybody's salaries are, where they are in that range. But in so doing, I want the 2009 one too.
Okay, well,
Because it's a nice comparison, because now we're seeing, okay, that's where we were in 2009. Now, and then the whole 3% brings us to this, it brings us to this amount.
Sure.
So other people, so we're manufacturing, not manufacturing, but we're creating the facts. We're not allowing others to create the facts because we're putting it out there. We're creating a full, transparent situation. I understand that it's just for the ranges, but it's become lots more than that.
Okay, that's,
Now,
I guess I'm not
that's
privy
only-
to all this other discussion going on.
Right, but
But
that's,
if there's another discussion going on about that, then we can show that.
so I would like to see it, just because I feel like we're being as transparent as we can. I want to be able to say, yep, Scott makes this.
Yep.
It's this, it's only mid-range.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
But our
that's
city
fine.
administrator back in 2009 was making this. We need it all on there. That's my opinion.
Sure.
What is that number, Molly?
You really wanna know?
I'm curious.
Yeah, but 2004, it was 81,400. So if he ended at 132, the city administrator in 2009, it's a 62% increase.
Well, that's a range. I don't know what the city administrator.
Well,
was
and we
thinking
can't open up to a
2009.
public hearing because it's just a discussion item.
Sorry, I didn't
No,
hear
it's okay.
Ben asked me.
Yeah, he
Ben's
did, he
fault.
asked you. So will, council, how do you feel about adding a couple additional columns for current salaries? Ben, are you okay?
I'm comfortable with that, yeah, I mean,
Current salary column?
I know we're not addressing that now, but because it's become such an item,
Yeah.
the other people are creating the information, so let's get it to them
I mean, I will say, Scott, I had someone
straight.
that said, thought you were making 50,000 more than you really are.
Sure.
So I like to be able to tell them the actual amount.
And I think that's great. And that's just it. I'm not privy to these discussions. All I know is what we
Yeah.
talked about in our meeting.
You're just going off the direction we've given you, so.
So if there's discussion going on about
I'm in a
that.
convalescent center for a week, so I
That's
am not
fine.
on
We'll get that
Facebook.
information up.
I'm
Because
so happy.
The information, I mean, we want to be transparent. We want to be able to explain why we pay people what we pay.
Yeah.
I think we'll find that almost each employee, if they're above the mid-range, it's not by much, or they are below the mid-range. I mean, that's-
That'd be great. So we can
so
add
we
that
can- we
column.
can show.
Okay. And then if how much you make, go to dinner after or whatnot. No.
Yeah, sure.
I know, and I just appreciate your patience as staff because, you know, it's not everyone who has their salaries posted for everyone to see, and that's personal information, but at the same time, it's public.
Exactly.
And
right.
so I appreciate your patience in allowing us to be transparent and post
Yeah,
those.
so you can tell it makes us slightly uncomfortable, but we all
Yeah.
understand that our salaries are public record.
Mhm.
And so to put them up there to have the discussion is fine.
Mhm.
It will make us squirm a little
Yeah.
bit as we have that, but we as a city need to be able to explain
Explain.
why
Mhm.
and justify why and say, here's our methodology in doing this, which we have no problem and let's have that discussion.
And I appreciate that because like I said, we're responding to false information or inaccurate information going out on social media. And like I said, the person who asked me, I mean, they were way off in their range.
Mhm.
And so I want to be able to respond to them with accurate information, like Cindy's saying, let's get it firsthand here from the city. And then, like I said, and I just appreciate, you know, your
Then we have it
patience.
at our disposal to, get the information to the people that need that information.
Yes. And you have it anyway, I mean.
Well,
this
we
is-
do, but I want you to find it all.
Yeah, and. That information is available to any citizen at any time.
Right.
They don't have to wait for us to show it on the graph in a meeting.
Mhm.
If they ever want to know.
Call Molly.
Any decision making, it's open record, they file a grandma request, we'll give them whatever.
Sure, but let's just get it out there for them. They don't have to do all that. Kathy doesn't have to do 10 drama.
Philosophically though, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess I'm not familiar with this conversation that's going on about salaries either, but if it's not in the context of this discussion, maybe there's a different context that we ought to be answering those.
Well.
Yeah, like,
Maybe
it's
separate.
just a separate document that we create for people that have had curiosities about staff salaries. Here's that, but does it muddy the waters in terms of what we're doing in terms of ranges here?
You could create it as a separate graph, you know, not.
Or just a separate
Well,
discussion
I
piece of
don't,
it.
I mean, I don't mind just throwing up another column. The issue becomes is are we gonna go from ranges to our compensation philosophy as a city? Are we gonna now have a public hearing on something that is separate from what, because this does handle compensation philosophy as far as determining our ranges, but then paying within the range, we have issues that we have to work through as a city with all city staff, not just appointed officials, to try to figure out the best way to, because our goal is, when we do these, is to retain quality employees. And so that's why we base it on market. That's why we are saying, what are our neighbors paying? Because when the employee approaches us and says, you know, for the same size, we have a city that's the same size, and they're paying, they can pay me extra $10,000. So we're looking at it saying, here's an employee that we've invested 10 years in, that we really want to keep here at the city because they're one of our best, but the neighboring city can pay $10,000 more, and it's the same size city and roughly the same budget. We have to look at ourselves and say, now, is this going to cause problems? I mean, police departments, fire departments are a good example. A lot of training goes into these people to get them up to speed, to make them effective, and then if there's a neighboring community that's going to pay them more. Now, if they decide I'm going to go to West Valley or Sandy City, and these are bigger cities that pay more, that's just how it's going to be. But we're trying to avoid cities that are roughly the same size and what we would consider a lateral move. Somebody moving for more pay, just because we're not keeping up with what the market. So that's the compensation philosophy in a nutshell.
Yeah, whether it's a separate graph, a column, just as long as the information is transparent and up there, I think it's.
So what is the question? What is the big question out there?
Well, there's numbers floating out what the staff is making, everyone's salaries. So Gene is supposedly got a 28% increase, Scott's making 50,000 more than he is, people are questioning salaries. So let's just put it up on the screen and make it transparent, so it's coming from the city instead of people.
And I think some of that's coming from the website where I think it includes your benefit on top of that.
So, and that's fine. Again, probably the easiest way to do this, to keep it to where the conversation will somewhat make sense, is probably just add another column. The 2009, I don't.
Well, then you don't have to do the percentage of the percent change, just add it in that column.
My only concern about 2009 is I don't know what the philosophy was at the time. I don't know if certain employees were above market, below market, you know, and what I don't want is to put up a bunch of numbers from 2009 that's going to cause issue with the numbers today,
well, and plus
because we don't know the context of what those numbers.
And some of those people don't work here anymore.
So should we just do current?
My preference is we just do current, but I know Cindy feels differently about that.
No, I
If
did.
they
I
want
was
to have
just
2009,
I was just trying to bring everything forward.
Well, I think it's in the context where were we at in 2009? What was the ranges, right?
So the ranges we show.
Yeah.
Now and again, I think there's a conversation going on that I'm not super knowledgeable about. But if there's people in the public that are saying we're paying people too much nowadays compared to where we were 6 years ago, then that information could be valuable. Maybe, I don't know. I
But
mean,
then we could say, why 6 years, why not 10 years, why not?
we have a
3 years?
different
I mean, it's
administrator, different finance director, different police chief, different fire chief, different public works director. We have different people in those positions, and so things have changed as far as.
Dion is the only one.
Oh, and Tina.
Yeah, there's a lot of loyal, good people.
So how can the city engineer that's not applicable for the previous range?
We didn't have one.
He wasn't a director at that.
Wasn't.
And this is salary only.
It's just in with the rest of the employees.
Yeah, he wasn't a department head at the time.
Okay.
He was hired.
That changed in 2010.
Okay. And this is salary only, not benefits.
Yes, this is base salary.
And David, do we know, is that what the other cities do? They just do base salary, they don't include benefits because everyone's, I guess, is so different, or why?
Well,
is
in the
it different?
database, you can pull different numbers, but to make it as close to apples as we could.
Just base salary?
It's base salary, yeah.
Well, that may be the document, based on what I'm hearing about this conversation in the community, maybe that's what we need to explain to people is there's a difference between salary and salary with benefits. Those are different numbers. They're not like
We'll
apples to
just put
apples.
an asterisk on it and say salary only.
Yeah, can we add that?
Well, so, yeah, if we're gonna put the actuals, we'll just say base salary.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll list that.
We'll just title the column base salary.
So one of the things that was requested was a little bit more of the detail. So in your packets, you can pull up each individual position and you can see the comparison numbers with all the cities that go into the details. So this isn't just David sitting around making up numbers. This is an actual database that we pay money to belong to
I
pull
have a
this information
flashback from my
from.
stats class.
No, this is a
Sitting
lot of
around making up
information.
standard deviation, David.
And I see the date on it is March 24th, and so obviously, but
Almost
comments
been
were.
panic attack.
So, thank you. No, this is great. Do you have more information, David, that you want to share?
I'm good if you're good.
Anyone else from the council that you can answer for next week? Okay,
It's just a
thanks, David.
compliment. I think it's tremendous demonstration of the effort to be responsive to requests.
I do enjoy this actually a whole lot.
We know who likes spreadsheets when we start talking
We know
about
who
it.
likes data.
Whose eyes glaze and who's engaged.
And I'm like, ooh.
Thank you. Okay, and then the fourth North Store, we'll get that back on the agenda for next
Yes,
week.
yeah.
Okay, and then also the items from the public hearing, BMC, the Pleasant Grove City Code about the,
We
we
covered
went over that,
both
yeah,
those
we
already,
did,
yeah.
okay, all right.
Mayor Pro Tem, I have one more item that will be on next week's agenda that, it's going to be a development agreement with Knowlton General for a building on Main Street. And
Okay.
the draft just came back to me today from them. And you can put it on the agenda, we talked about it in director's meeting, but basically the development agreement addresses some parking and access issues that they have with
Okay.
developing that piece of property. It's the blank space on Main Street
Okay.
and south of the old city hall.
Okay.
And they want to do a mixed use type of thing where they have some residential and some commercial. They're underparked for the commercial. And so in exchange for some increased green space and landscaping and pedestrian access to their property,
Okay.
we negotiated to grant them a flexible parking easement for 7 stalls on our side of
Mhm.
the area. And the actual easement has not been defined yet. So this is just the initial stages of the development agreement. Basically, it just says, this is what we're gonna agree to do,
Okay.
but they need it in order to move forward with their funding.
Okay. Okay, so that will be on for next week. Now, will they be here presenting, or is it you presenting?
I assume they'll be here.
Okay.
I can make sure they can.
Okay. Okay, so anything else for next week?
I don't know, we can find some
There
more
could be.
stuff if you
We
want.
could Okay. Okay, neighborhood business, Libby, anything? You got your Mudville representative, are you fully staffed now? Awesome, all right. David?
You got a good one. from Mudville.
We were just waiting for nails.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think as long as that plat is signed.
okay, nice haircut.
Yeah, I learned what a number 3 is.
Not
Not the right one.
I like it, fast,
Should an engineer know that kind of thing?
quick and easy. Just ahead. And anything from you?
Right to David's.
Oh,
And
sorry.
you're up.
Let's see, we've got you probably noticed, we've got the Thai house cuisine.
Yeah, moving
along.
along.
So that's been long awaited.
Mhm.
We've got the development agreement, let's see what else.
You want to talk a bit about the city picnic?
Oh, yeah, so this year, we're doing something, we're gonna have a Hawaiian luau style picnic party.
Cool.
And so that will be held in the patio area of the Roscara
Oh, okay.
campus. So
On Monday, August 10th.
August the 10th.
We do need RSVPs, so.
Okay.
And that does involve planning commission.
All city officials and employees and immediate family.
All right, thanks for organizing that, Kathleen. Thank you. David?
Just a reminder that the promenade's on Thursday. So come and
Lynn will
enjoy.
be singing.
Who?
Lynn and his
Oh,
brothers
really?
will be singing that night.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It's superheroes
planning
night,
commission.
and there's some really cool things that are happening with that. Some of the vendors have made special superheroes products, and
Oh.
they've reserved them just for that night. And anyway, there's a lot of really neat things for kids, for families, for adults, for everybody. So come and spend some time at the promenade. You know, there's a lot of them, and each week has different fun and different themes. So
Okay, cool. Thanks. Dion?
How's the,
Oh,
just
sorry.
as a question, how's the hiring for the position of
Yeah.
part-time? A couple of weeks ago, you said you're gonna do another series of interviews, I think.
And I meant to update the council. We interviewed two people a couple of weeks ago. And didn't well, they're still out there, but we have 4 others we're interviewing tomorrow morning. And so we're gonna work through that and then make a decision. We're finding that the uniqueness of the position, where part of it's working with the chamber on the economic development role. And the other part's more of a PR, social media thing. To find somebody who has talents in both areas and accept a part-time wage might be a challenge for us. We'll know better tomorrow. It's possible we might need to actually split the hours. I don't think the budget would change, but we might need to split it and maybe have 2 different positions. But we'll know better tomorrow.
Dion?
I'm just right past Shannon Field, search all in today, they're about done with planning. It's really good. So,
Awesome.
impressive.
Thank you. Thanks. Marty?
Just a couple of things. We were requested to put a little bit of information on the city website, which we have done underneath the Public Works tab. There is a link that's called Construction Project Updates that you can refer people to, and it gives a couple of the larger projects. There was some question as to the amount of detail that we want to do on this. We do a lot of projects, and we've got developers that are doing a lot of projects, but those projects are generally like 1 week at the most, maybe a day. And so those were difficult things that by the time we get them up, they're probably done. So we're focusing more on the larger projects. We have the First West project. There's the Questar gas line project coming down 30 East. There's some project information on there with those projects with some timelines when they're going to be constructing. We'll be updating those weekly. Greg Calvert down there will be doing that and coordinating that. So hopefully we can try to keep some more up-to-date information on that.
So basically it's timelines of completion dates and then like a 1 or 2 liner of what is actually going on with the project and the area that will be affected or closed. Is that kind of what it is?
That's the goal, is to kind of give an update of, what is the current progress and then what is the overall project description and
completion.
Start and end dates of the project. So
What's going on with Loader?
Loader Ave is
If I forget one more
development
time and I'm going up that road and I
complex.
have to go all the way around, I'm gonna.
That's a subdivision to the north.
Well, because I thought, the week it was supposed to be closed, it didn't.
It didn't.
And then it was the next week, and I thought it was only gonna be closed for like 3 or 4 days, and now we're going on.
It was gonna be at least a week, and they found that what they thought was in the ground wasn't exactly the way, fairly typical when you open things up, so.
So it was that first week just due to the rain or something?
I wasn't here last week, so I don't know what happened.
I don't know if it was all rain related. I understand that there were some things that they encountered that we had to do some changes.
So like is the Loader project on there, on the website?
No, so again, these development projects, like for example, today, we had to shut down Leonard North for 3 or 4 hours, or 6 hours. By the time we got that information on the
It'd be
website, it's
obsolete,
done.
yeah.
And so, same concept, even if it's 1 week long, by the time we get that information, we can give it to our web, I can't remember his name. Tram, and he might post it that night or the next day, kind of depending on his schedule. But a lot of times these projects are kind of quick in and out of the roads, and then they're just working on their development project. So sometimes they say, well, it's going to take us 2 days, and sometimes it takes longer. So when do we put those on and don't put those on? I guess that's kind of the concern, I guess, with the shorter projects. Do we try to manage that, give a full description of all development work being done in the city, and if they're going to be in a road, we identify that. That would take a lot of effort and coordination and time, and we don't have weekly construction meetings with these developers and contractors. That's all done through engineering and our engineering inspectors.
So do we have like what's going on, just right here by the light and all these,
The gas.
like, there's a lot.
The Questar gas.
And that's on there?
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing that you may not see is, so we've asked them to provide us weekly updates from Questar Gas, because we don't track all their projects. We do have a weekly coordination meeting that's helping us to kind of decipher the information they're giving us. We're trying to get that information on there, and they're sending us an update of this is where we plan on being working during the next week or 2 from this point to this point, just to kind of give some general information.
Okay.
So Loader, we're looking at, we don't know the timeline now.
I don't know, they sent me a request this morning for approval of some changes because of conflicts that they're running into the ground, into the ground.
Okay. Alright. No, we're getting there. I mean, this is a start. This is good.
Yeah.
So we'll just refer people to the site and just kind of see how it goes in the feedback and see if they're wanting projects maybe a little bit short time period. A week is kind of a long time, I think, for, on resident, but maybe let's just see how the feedback goes. We'll go from there. So yeah, thanks for doing that. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, all right, thanks, Buddy. Chief Thomas?
I'm pretty sure I mentioned this before, but I'll just remind you that the crews are out turning hydrants.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you get questions, this is just part of the rotation that we do. We check a third of the hydrants every year, and so if people are wondering kind of what's going on, we check the flow, we check pressures, make sure everything's functioning right, and then if we have any issues at all, then we communicate with Public Works.
Mm-hmm.
You could turn that into a free block party, right?
Yeah.
Swim party.
I have great memories of that. I have. By the way, did fireworks just start a fire?
They just
No.
started.
I know.
I wondered that too, Diane.
Sorry.
Here, all of a sudden.
How many hydrants do we have in the city, do you know, Chief?
I mean, what?
How many hydrants do we have in the city? That they have to check?
Well,
Like, and they check a third a year?
We do a third of them every year.
Okay. All right, awesome, thank you. Chief Smith?
I don't have anything else. Oh, one thing, I
Okay.
just want to thank, and I'll forget, I'll miss people because I don't know who was there. The only person I do know, for sure was Molly, because I know she headed a lot of it, but just thank everybody who helped, do the work on the police department. It looks really good, so thank you to everyone who participated.
You have almost everybody who's here. Jennifer, Lisa, Ben, Eric, Sid.
Thank you.
We had a lot. And
Yeah.
thank Leon.
And I like the monkey. The monkey's pretty cool.
Nobody knows about the monkey.
There's nothing about a monkey.
That was kind of on the down low.
All right. There is no
Not
monkey.
now.
That was an inside joke.
Okay, we'll just leave it at that then. Sherry, wait, the grant, go on the grant, this is awesome.
Yes, but I also wanted to mention summer reading is ending next week, so we are just about done. And we've had really good attendance, and I'm a little concerned about losing 7 parking stalls, because you might have noticed you can't find a place to park. And I anticipate that being a worse problem as the years progress. Before I even got to the library, one of the staff applied for a grant for RFID, and I'll explain what that is. And she got rejected. And then I applied 3 more times for the same thing. And this last time, the 4th time, we got it. So that shows persistence pays off. And this is a $49,000 grant. And no match.
No match. Wow.
And what this includes is, well, so RFID, they use it in grocery stores and other places too, but you put a sticker that's got a little antenna inside it, inside every book and item in the library. And
Can it cause cancer?
I don't think so.
Only if you hold it up to your head for 8 hours at a time.
And then you take a barcode scanner and you program it. I mean, it takes a second. It takes basically scanning the barcode. And once that's in there, then when you take your books up to check out, you can have a stack of books. You just set them down. It automatically reads through all of the stack and checks them all out at once and turns off the security at the same time. And then, so there will be security, and that was a big part of the grant, was security gates for upstairs and downstairs. Those were $18,000 or something like that. They were very expensive. But those will automatically, with that tag, it will automatically signal if something has not been checked out, and the antenna turned off. And it also tracks how many people come in and out of the library.
Oh, really?
Automatically with that too. And then we'll also get 2 more self-checkout machines that will work using this technology that in the long term are going downstairs in what will be the children's area.
Cool.
And staff stations, check-in is much easier because same thing, you can just set it down, it automatically checks it in. You can do inventory, just wave this, they call it an inventory wand, but you can just wave it across the bookshelves and it tells you what's there so that you don't have to take, what has been done in this library in the past is they've loaded every single book onto carts, brought them up to the front, scanned every single book with the barcode scanner, put them back to know what we really have. This will totally eliminate needing to do that. So it's really awesome technology. The staff especially will love it, but patrons will too. Patrons love it. It's super easy too.
Yes, twice I've gone and the book's
It's
not
really
there.
an intuitive technology when you check out. It's a piece of cake.
Yeah.
Even older people that I've used this, we had that where I worked before. Even older people who don't want to use self-checkout, we would just walk over with them and do it for them. It's no problem, we'll just do it.
So the fire chief's okay?
We'll show you how to do
The
it.
older fire chief.
But we just walk over, do it for them. They watch how simple it was and never ask for help again. And it really is basic.
That's awesome. So running much more, it'll help water run much more efficiently and it's cost savings, and that's awesome. So just keep applying for those grants. You're on a roll. So yeah, keep going. Thank you.
A quick
That's
question, if I may,
Yes.
about that. Are there ongoing licensing fees or is it?
There
a
are
one-time
maintenance
shot?
costs that we'll have to absorb in our budget.
Do you know what those are by chance?
It just depends on which company we go with. We haven't decided. There are multiple companies.
Is it pretty
I want
minimal
to
or?
say it's $1,100 a year or something like that.
Cool. Way to go. Thanks, Sherry. Appreciate that. Scott?
So a couple hours before this meeting, I sent the council an email with a link to the structural engineering study done by Bowen and Collins. That's for your review. It is in a draft form right now, but it's going to be pretty close to what the final form is. As you read through it, you're probably going to have questions because it gets technical fairly quickly. I've added Stephen Cohen's email address and phone number. Now you can talk to some of the staff here and we'll tell you what we know from it, but if you really want to get into the technical side, he's the phone call that you'll want to make. They would like to come and present it to the council. And we penciled in next Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Is there anybody that has a time conflict with that?
What is that, July?
So it's July 29th.
Can we do it any earlier or not?
We could. And we could do it. Last time they came at like 4 o'clock and we.
That's even better. I mean, I thought, hey, prepared on Tuesday and then Wednesday late, so if we could even do, maybe, I don't know, whatever else they do, if we could do it earlier during the workday, so we're not here.
That's fine with us.
A little harder for me, but it's not gonna be a long meeting, right? We anticipate an hour.
A couple hours, yeah. There's a lot of information to go over and I think we're gonna get a lot of questions. I mean, the staff, as we were going through it, we had a lot of questions. I spent probably 45 minutes on the phone with him as he was explaining things.
Could we do like a 3 or 4 o'clock?
Yeah, I mean, for staff, that's great. We're all over that. With you guys that have to leave your jobs to come, if you want to give us direction.
Earlier the better. The later the better for me, but if we shop for after the workday, 5:36, I don't mind missing dinner, but getting here.
Is 4 o'clock too early then?
4 o'clock would be trickier.
I can make that work. For that day.
I'd say 15 minutes.
I'd say to keep the staff here on Tuesday and then Wednesday, and if we can avoid that, that would be.
Well, the staff doesn't need to be here, right? Do they?
Well.
Yeah, certain staff does, not
The
everybody.
chiefs and Scott and probably Tina. I mean,
But
David.
we're okay to do that, but we wanted to be
Sorry,
convenient to you.
is 5 okay?
And I'll text the mayor and see what his schedule is, but if the five of you want to agree on this.
Or is there another day that we could meet earlier?
Friday would be easier, if you don't mind. I don't wanna wait too long. I don't know
That's
if
the
they can-
24th.
No, that's
I
Friday.
was thinking the following Friday.
I can't wait.
I will be here.
Fridays, they're all off at noon.
Oh, yeah.
So why don't we just compromise at 4:30?
Okay.
Well,
4:30?
let's,
I can make it work.
okay, so let's say 4:30
Okay.
next Wednesday,
Okay.
and I'll see if that works out for the mayor. If not, I'll let you know. If you don't hear from me, just assume that's where we're at.
We'll
I'll send a
send something
reminder.
out.
Okay.
I'll send a reminder email.
Okay. And so since that is in draft form, that probably shouldn't go public at this point.
I wouldn't, no, I think, they need to come present to you first.
Before we, because there's gonna be a lot of questions that if we just send this
Because
out
you
to the
might give
public or
them
somebody.
different direction before that report's finalized.
So.
And so I wouldn't hesitate to send that out,
Okay.
for, public scrutiny just yet.
Okay.
It will have plenty of time for public scrutiny, but let's make sure we're all on the same page before.
Okay.
Well, it shouldn't be dispersed until it's not in draft form anymore.
Okay.
Not until you've had the opportunity
Oh,
to
it's
have it
final.
presented to you.
Okay.
After that, then,
Okay.
because you may ask them for additional information
Before we make it.
before you make it final,
Okay.
so.
Tina, do you have anything?
No, I had lots of fun last week being Scott.
Yes.
That was
And
fun.
I loved her being me.
That
You should do that
was
more
really fun,
often.
It was fun.
We were nicer to her than we are to you. Scott.
Okay, well, no wonder she liked us. I think she had her issues that she had to work through, so.
Okay, I know you already touched on you, Kathy.
It's 2 feet, early voting starts, at City Hall. Okay, we have machines there. They're actually coming in tomorrow to set them up, so.
Beautiful. Okay. I'll get that out. Eric? Diana? I have a question, where are we on city directory?
Pretty dang close.
Oh, let's, how about a date? We have a date?
I met with Fred.
Because I think we took the pictures in January and now we're like.
Older.
Yeah, I
You might have done yours in January. We had employees we were tracking down up till about 2 weeks ago.
So where are we at with that?
So I met with Trent yesterday, and we are just organizing the final kind of order of the employees. He's met with many of the department heads to get their input on how they want their departments to look and order of employees, things like that. And so, he said by the end of this week, he'd like to have kind of a final draft that we'd be able to look through and make final changes and edits. So we're hoping by the end of the month, we'll be able to.
Now, did we do pictures for like planning commission, board of adjustment, things like that? Can we include just their contact information in the city directory? Maybe not a picture, but at least their contact information?
So this is not an external directory. This is,
That's fine.
yeah.
But I still like to,
So we already have a list with all that information that's.
has that been
kept
under
together
the
every year.
recent, where's that at?
I know she emails it out every year.
Is it all in one place or is it separate from planning commission, board of adjustment?
No, it's all in one
It's all
place.
in
It's called the
one.
2015 city directory. She emailed it out at the beginning.
At the beginning of the year, it comes out every year.
Okay, but then that gets updated with new members and things like that?
Well, it gets updated every year, so we've added somebody.
Also, I mean, we had a lot of new planning commission and we had a new board of adjustment and then we had, so I just wanna make sure that that's
What, photos of, yeah, so
So August
we got
1st.
two different things going on here. We have a photo directory that's gonna be the elected officials and all the full-time and permanent part-time employees.
Mhm.
Then we have our city directory, which has no pictures, just has names, office number, cell number, and we have that for all the employees in the city that have an office phone or a cell phone. And then included in that is planning commission, board of adjustment, and a few of the committees, I believe.
Arts, things like that.
But we only update that once a year, so if we've made changes in May, that won't be reflected until January.
Okay. All right, so August 1st, we'll get that directory out.
We will get you a draft copy when it's ready, and then you guys will have an opportunity to look at it and see if you wanna tweak anything.
All right.
We can't do anything about individual photos, but we can, where you move.
We can do
and-
Photoshop, that's
Hey,
not a problem.
wait, I do have one thing. So you can't go leave
No,
yet.
go ahead.
So my dad fell and fractured his femur, and he lives in Saratoga Springs. My mom tried to lift him and she tore a muscle in her back. But very wonderfully, when 911 was called, I had two Pleasant Grove boys show up in my paramedics that work for part-time for Saratoga Springs. It was very, very nice. But on a side note, we have no convalescent facility in Pleasant Grove, just so you know. It's a big it's a big hole lacking.
Everywhere.
We have Alpine Care.
No, that,
Isn't that a rehab facility?
That's but convalescent, I think, is the interim place
Like
between the
Stonehenge.
hospital to the nursing home.
It's called transitional
Transitional,
Yeah.
whatever.
It's just a rehab.
So there's not many in Utah County and there's waiting lists to get in.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Stonehenge one in American Fork.
And that's where they are. So I have been in a convalescent center for a weekend.
Ben?
I've got a couple of questions. I'll catch some staff afterwards, but nothing that needs to be done here.
All right, make a motion to adjourn.
Wait, are we gonna review the calendar?
24th offices are closed, correct?
Yes, for the holiday.
For the holiday.
Find your day.
Got it?
27th is a debate, right?
27th debate at doTERRA at 6, we're looking at 6, 7 o'clock for the debate. We'll see you there.
Some of us.
Anything else? All right.